Chapter 54. Sometimes, Jingwan admired these people who could act at any time and place. She was howling so fiercely, but when she stopped, she didn't seem to be in a sorry state. She was like a weeping beauty. If it was someone who didn't know, even if it was a woman, their heart would soften. However, in the face of her grandmother, who had experienced decades of wind and rain, those tricks were really not enough. Madame Luo walked to the side and sat down. "Old lady, what's the situation?" Madame Wang knew that Madame Luo didn't avoid Jingwan, so she directly said, "Mother, the thing is, Madame Bai's daily food comes from the small kitchen of a falling plum house." As soon as she finished speaking, Madame Luo turned her head to look at Jingwan, and Jingwan seemed to sense it and looked back. At that moment, Jingwan read the meaning in Madame Luo's eyes. "See, your mother is such an idiot." Jingwan was helpless. Her mother's purpose was actually very simple. She hoped that the pregnant concubine would be able to eat well. After all, without the support of her husband, a concubine would be a concubine. Even if she was pregnant, the amount of food she ate would not be better than that of the official wife. She would eat from the small kitchen, and she would even subsidize the concubine. Madame Zhang used to do this before, but nothing happened. Now it was the same as before. It was not that the people around her didn't remind her, but Madame Zhang was so naive and sweet. She thought that everyone in the world had the same thoughts as her. Not only did she promise that nothing would happen, but she also said that it was not good for the people around her to speculate about others with bad intentions. Jingwan was very busy a few days ago, and the people of the falling plum house didn't want to disturb her with this matter. They asked her to persuade Madame Zhang, thinking that it was only a few days, so nothing should happen. In the end, they all regretted it. Today, Madame Bai asked for some desserts. Not long after she ate, her stomach began to hurt. Soon, she saw red and reported it to her younger sister-in-law. Her younger sister-in-law invited a doctor she was familiar with from outside, but by the time the doctor arrived, the child was already gone. Daughter-in-law had someone check the desserts. There was indeed something unclean inside. The person in charge of making the desserts was second sister-in-law's head maidservant, Lame. The person who delivered the desserts was second sister-in-law's second-rank maidservant, Lu Er. Lu Er personally handed the desserts to Baishi's maidservant, Kai Ling. The three maidservants all said that during the time the desserts were in their hands, no unrelated person had touched them. The ingredients used for the winter sweet were all ready-made from the fallen plum house. Her daughter-in-law had sent people to check the ingredients, and there were no problems. In that case, the problem basically lay with these three people. The belle was a clever one. She swore that she did not do anything. She was the only one who followed Baishur into the Luo family. She was loyal to Baishur. She hoped more than anyone that her Yin-Yang could give birth to a boy or a girl. Lu Er was usually lively, but she was not the least bit careless when it came to doing things. She received the desserts from Lame and handed them to Kai Ling. Along the way, there were basically people who saw her. After she finished her part, she did not say anything more. As for Lame, she was not a child of the Luo family. When she was a few years old, she was brought into the Luo family and followed Madame Zhang. From a little maidservant, she was promoted to Madame Zhang's head maidservant a year ago. She was a little dull and clumsy. Because she was very good at making desserts, although she did not do anything in the kitchen, she often made desserts for Madame Zhang. When she learned that something had happened to Madame Bai, she was so anxious that she cried. She repeatedly said that she did not do it. When Madame Bai slandered Madame Zhang, she also said that the madam was not that kind of person. She could not say a word more. As for the doctor, it was Madame Bai's second-rank maidservant, Zhu Er, who reported it to my younger sister-in-law. My younger sister-in-law said that she only heard that Madame Bai was not feeling well, so she went to invite a doctor from outside as usual and did not bother the doctor in the house. However, Zhu Er said that she had explained Madame Bai's situation very clearly and said that it was very serious. She wanted to make an exception and asked the doctor in the house to take a look. However, my younger sister-in-law said that she was just a concubine, so there was no need to bother the doctor in the house. The ins and outs of the whole thing were basically clear now. It was just a routine. If she investigated carefully, she would definitely find some clues. However, whether she could find the mastermind behind the scenes in the end depended on that person's skills. What was more, Jingwan was curious about the role of the old maid who was locked in the woodshed in her courtyard in this matter. One thing was certain. She ran to her courtyard on the spur of the moment. Mama Gong had already investigated who she had met before she went to Begonia Elegant House. However, in Jingwan's opinion, if this matter was really her third aunt's doing, there might be no result in the end. Jingwan's eyes fell on her third aunt. She lowered her eyebrows and narrowed her eyes. There was no sadness or joy on her face. The expression in her eyes could not be seen clearly. Her whole person was quiet. It must be said that Madame Lu was a person with a sense of propriety. She knew that her grandmother did not like her very much, so she did not go forward to make trouble. In front of others, she was not strong, but she was never weak. In the beginning, the other mistresses of the Luo family's inner court weren't sure if she was in control of the entire situation or if the other yin-yangs were framing each other. However, after a long time, even if they still didn't have any evidence against her, they more or less had an idea. Madame Lu's face was naturally thicker than Luo Jingying's. You could never catch her fault on the surface. You could not see her gaffe unless she deliberately showed it. However, if she was really the same on the surface, then she would not have raised a daughter with Luo Jingying's temperament. In this ancient era, a mother's influence on their children, especially their daughters, was too great. If she did not have the memory of her previous life, perhaps she would have become as silly and sweet as Madame Zhang. Because when she was in Qi and prefecture, Jingwan was puzzled about this point. Taking advantage of the fact that children were not easy to be noticed, and she had a lot of time, she secretly watched Madame Lu for more than half a year. In this way, she discovered Madame Lu's unknown side. At that time, Jingwan was very surprised. If this person lived in a certain circle in her previous life, she would be like a fish in water. She would definitely get an Oscar. Madame Lu always regarded herself as the descendant of the founding duke. She could not see or was unwilling to see the reality. But she was a very rational person. She never revealed her inner thoughts to others. To sum it up, she was a maidservant, but she had the dream of being a princess. After understanding Madame Lu's thoughts, Jingwan sometimes felt that it was ridiculous. Her third uncle was only a son of a concubine. Even if his grandparents passed away when they separated, he did not get much. Her third uncle's eyes were high, but his ability was mediocre. Madame Lu saw through him too clearly, so she pinned all her hopes on her children. If she really put all her thoughts on teaching the two children, she may not be unable to get what she wanted in the future. Unfortunately, her mind had long been crooked. She was always scheming, especially when she was the one who suppressed her daughter. She couldn't wait to be torn into pieces. Moreover, Madame Lu had a very strong sense of vanity and jealousy in her bones. If others were doing well, she would be unhappy. Luo Jingying had learned this from her. However, in the entire Luo family's backyard, only her mother was good at scheming. Unexpectedly, her mother was supported by her father. Even if someone splashed dirty water on her father would believe that she was pure and innocent. So, Madame Lu didn't really make a move that many times. Jingwan didn't know what other people thought about this matter, but she felt that it was most likely third aunt's doing. She was as ruthless as ever. Who knew how long she had hidden these spies in Falling Plum House? If she dared to expose them, there was at least a 90% chance that she would frame her mother. It was fine if it was a normal matter, but when it came to his children, even if it was her father, he would definitely be unhappy. More importantly, Madame Zhang's image in the hearts of the servants was completely ruined. No matter how good she was in the past, they would all think that she was putting on an act and had a Buddha's mouth but a snake's heart. If it was a scheming person, this situation wouldn't be a big deal because she could suppress it and turn the tables. However, if it was Madame Zhang, her life would probably be difficult. Her purpose was not to kill Madame Zhang, because she knew very well that this was not enough to kill Madame Zhang. She just didn't want Madame Zhang to be free and happy all day, which would make Jingwan unhappy. Jingwan thought about it carefully. If this game was successful, it would really hit the snake at its weak point. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652935. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 55. Because everyone had their own opinions, Madame Zhang protected the people in her courtyard and did not allow torture, and Madame Wang could not just hit Madame Bai's people. By the time Madame Luo and Jingwan arrived, the matter had already reached a deadlock. With their arrival, Madame Wang was not displeased. Instead, she seemed to be relieved. She really did not know what to do with someone as muddle-headed as her second sister-in-law. Faced with Madame Luo's question, she hesitated and looked at Madame Zhang. How could Madame Luo not understand? She said expressionlessly, "Find all the relatives of the related people in the house and in front of them. Flog them 10 times. If they still don't tell the truth, their whole family will be punished. If they still don't tell the truth, sell them." No one would have thought that Madame Luo would be so ruthless. "Mother." Madame Zhang hurriedly wanted to plead. "Shut up. You are the one who has the least right to speak now. If it weren't for your stupid and wooden-headed brain, would this have happened? If it weren't for the fact that I still have something to ask you to do, I would have grounded you for 3 years." Madame Luo was really angry. It was one thing for her to be hopelessly stupid, but she also always implicated others. Madame Luo had always been a good mother-in-law and never treated her daughter-in-law harshly. Even if she knew that Madame Lu was a two-faced and vicious woman, she still treated her indifferently and never made things difficult for her. Occasionally, when she encountered some things, she would secretly warn them. In front of so many people, it was definitely the first time that Madame Zhang was so merciless. Madame Zhang also didn't expect it to be like this. She felt wronged and cried, but she didn't dare to say a word. Jingwan stood next to Madame Luo. Seeing her mother like this, she couldn't do anything. After this incident, she hoped that she could learn a little bit, even if it was just a little bit. But even with such a low request, the hope was still slim. Most people only heard that Madame Luo blamed Madame Zhang, but some people also heard the trust in Madame Zhang's words. She clearly didn't believe that this was something that Madame Zhang could do. On the bed, Madame Bai was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. She had met an unromantic husband, an innocent and stupid mistress, and a mother-in-law who looked kind but didn't care about concubines. No matter how many methods she had, she couldn't use them. Obviously, it was that idiot who occupied the position of the matriarch who caused her to lose her child. It was such an obvious thing, but no one believed it. She should not have been so careless. She should not have thought that that woman would not have the guts to do anything. The fact was, when a stupid dog bit people, it was even more ruthless. It could even hit you when you were not prepared. She should have listened to the advice of the bell and not eaten the food sent by the falling plum house. The child that she had painstakingly gotten was gone just like that. The relevant people were gathered as quickly as possible. Everyone in the room was moved to the courtyard, including Madame Bai, who struggled to get up. Madame Luo did not comment on this, but Madame Zhang, seeing her pale face, wanted to persuade her. She seemed to have completely forgotten who was the one who said that she, Madame Zhang, was cruel and merciless, not even letting go of the unborn child in her belly. She was not just naive and sweet. In Jingwan's eyes, she was no different from the Virgin Mary. Fortunately, before Jingwan could do anything, Madame Zhang's mammy had already stopped her. Not to mention that Madame Bai had already recognized Madame Zhang as her enemy. Even if she didn't do this, Madame Bai was the matriarch and the other was a concubine. In front of the matriarch, she was like a maid. They were born to be at odds. No matter how well Madame Zhang did and how many good things she gave, Madame Bai would not appreciate it. Now that Madame Bai tried to dissuade her at this time, Madame Bai might think that Madame Bai had ulterior motives and wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of her confidant. Other than Kaylin, everyone else more or less had relatives. Even the winter suite that was bought from outside had been worshipped as a godmother in the Fu. However, it did not mean that Kaylin could escape the disaster. For a servant like her, who had unknown origins, as the ruler of the backyard, Madame Wang would naturally find out their origins. Madame Bai was a distant niece of the Luo Rongyan. She was the daughter of a concubine and was not favored. She was given away just like that and did not have a close maid who had a deep relationship with her. Kaylin was also from her so-called uncle's family. From the moment Kaylin was sent to Madame Bai's side, their fates were closely linked. Madame Bai's methods were also extraordinary, so she quickly took Kaylin as her confidant. Madame Luo originally did not want to intervene, but Madame Zhang's performance made her change her mind. She decided to fiercely tidy up the backyard. If she did not properly knock some people down, would they really think that she was a decoration in the residence? They always made all kinds of trouble from time to time. Originally, Wanwan was in a good mood because the good thing was about to happen, but someone was not sensible and wanted to ruin it. Madame Luo used a method that she would not use in the past. She directly took Luo Peishan's name card and asked people to go to the Luo Rongyan's house to ask for Kaylin. It was just a few servants, so the other party would not refuse to give face. Moreover, Kaylin was sent from their Fu. Now that there was a problem in the Luo family, they did not know the specific situation. It was inevitable that they could not help but wonder if something had happened in the Luo family. That was, they did not train them well. As a result, they could only hand over Kaylin in fear and trepidation. Although it was a gift from a superior to a subordinate, in fact, there was still the intention to curry favor. Luo Rongyan was not a good person, but his father was not to be underestimated. Jingwan carefully observed the expressions and reactions of the relevant people. She could conclude that Lame was not involved in it. Although she reacted in panic, she was not guilty. Lame was only 2 or 3 years older than Jingwan. She had been in contact with her when she was in Qianfu. Living in the capital for 3 years did not change her nature much. As for the other people, in fact, as long as they had enough experience, they basically knew what was going on. It was just that Kaylin's reaction was a little strange. Needless to say, Kaylin was afraid, but there was a trace of strange excitement mixed in. What was the secret behind it? She believed that she would soon know the answer. However, Madame Zhang's anxiety and Lame's fear made Jingwan decide to intervene. If there was really no problem with the ingredients in Fallen Plum House, then the desserts must have been swapped. In this way, it was not difficult to prove Lame's innocence. First aunt, is the desserts left by concubine by still here? Yes. Did you think of something? Madame Wang asked kindly. Jingwan nodded. There are a few desserts in Fallen Plum House. When I was in Qianfu, I made some small changes. The taste is different, especially the desserts made by Sister Lame. The taste is especially good. I think the desserts that concubine by wanted should be one of them, but I'm afraid that ordinary people can't taste them. For those who were used to all kinds of exquisite food, their mouths could more or less be considered as gluttons. It wasn't difficult for them to taste the subtle differences. As far as I know, Sister Lame habitually makes more desserts. I think it's the same this time. The previous inquiry also proved that she did not do anything unusual in the process of making desserts. I just don't know if there are any other desserts left. Jingwan, a girl, appeared here, although it was not particularly out of the ordinary. Because she was the only girl in the boudoir, it was naturally abrupt. As soon as she spoke, almost everyone's eyes were focused on her. Many people understood the meaning of her words. Fortunately, the desserts left in the Falling Plum House had not been touched yet. Plum blossom cake? When Jingwan saw it, she smiled. This was their second branch's special dessert. Her father especially liked it. No wonder Madame Bai would choose this. Whether it was taken from Fallen Plum House or sent to Madame Bai, they all looked exactly the same. Not to mention the color and style, even the texture was the same. No one doubted that this was made by two people. Thinking back to Jingwan's words, not only did it not clear Lamei's name, but it also made the people who originally trusted Lamei look at her with suspicion. Madame Bai wanted to pounce on her and eat her alive. Jingwan was indifferent. Try it, and you'll know. As she spoke, she stretched out her hand. Madame Luo grabbed her hand. You little girl, how can you eat unclean things? The things inside are so powerful that ordinary people can't touch them? Could it be that the person behind the scenes was worried that ordinary methods could not guarantee a 100% success rate? So he used a heavy hand? Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652936. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 56. It's not that serious, but it's better if you don't touch it. Wang Shi smiled, but there was a different meaning in her smile. Jingwan understood. Just because it was not serious, it did not mean that it was completely useless. Something that was used to deal with children would probably have some influence in this aspect. As an unmarried girl, she naturally had to stay away from it. She did not care about it, but others would. Jingwan pretended that she did not understand, and just did what an obedient child should do. Third girl, if you still trust eldest aunt's tongue, let eldest aunt taste it. Jingwan nodded. Wang Shi came from a noble family, so there was naturally no reason for her not to trust. Wang Shi picked up a piece of plum blossom cake, took a small bite, and chewed carefully. Mother, these 2 plum blossom cakes were indeed made by 2 people. Although if I did not deliberately taste it carefully, I'm afraid that I would be deceived. This one was made by Lamei. I can be sure that I have tasted her cooking not long ago. Wang Shi gave a positive answer, and there was no problem with the plum blossom cake in Luo Mei house. In that case, Lamei will be exempted from punishment for the time being. Stand aside. Even if she was innocent, it did not matter if she was beaten a few times. Not to mention a servant, even if it fell on her own children and grandchildren, Madame Luo would not frown. She spoke out of punishment because of Jingwan. She might cut off Luo Peishan's face, but she would not treat Jingwan like this. Mother, thank. Madame Luo cast a sharp look at her. Zhang Shi, who did not learn her lesson, silently shut up. However, she still fearlessly asked someone to bring Lamei over and comforted her with a few words. Although she had long known that Madame Luo was biased to Jingwan, she also let some people see her almost bottomless tolerance, care, and love for her. However, in the future, if her Luo Jingwan does something that endangers the Luo family, I don't believe that you, this damned old woman, will still be so unprincipled to protect her. As the ringtone's relatives hadn't arrived yet, she was left until the end. Because she was the last, the fear in her heart was also the heaviest. The people in front of her were mercilessly beaten. Perhaps they deliberately didn't have their mouths gagged, but the screams lingered in her ears. The bloody scene clearly didn't land on her, but she seemed to feel the bone-piercing pain in advance. Only half of the 10 strikes had passed, and Luo had confessed. She said that she was the one who changed the desserts, and the reason why no one found out along the way was that the food box she used had been tampered with in advance. There was a sandwich inside, and the plum blossom cake with the dirty stuff was made by her personally. She had learned a lot about making desserts from Lamei, especially the plum blossom cake. She had secretly put in a lot of effort to reach the level of passing off as genuine. Luo's words made everyone in Luo Mei house feel incredulous, especially Madame Zhang, who was hit hard. She liked Luo very much. She was delicate and lively, not careless in doing things, and had a kind heart. Why? Madame Zhang almost lost her soul as she asked. This servant just couldn't bear to see concubine by being so arrogant in the past. Madame treated her well wholeheartedly, but she didn't think about returning the favor. It was fine if she didn't think about stepping on Madame's head, especially after she became pregnant. She relied on the piece of flesh in her belly to order around Madame's sisters like little servant girls. This servant was angry and had evil thoughts. Madam, madam, this servant knows that she was wrong. This servant will accept any punishment, but please don't implicate this servant's family. They don't know anything. Lua stubbornly knelt, her eyes begging again. What a loyal and righteous servant. Other than the direct victim, Madame Bai, the other masters would probably like such a servant. Sure enough, not only Madame Zhang, but even Madame Luo's expression softened a little. However, that was all. Even if concubine Bai was only half a master, the child in her belly was a real master. Harming a master's life, no matter how big of a reason one had, one would not be easily let off. Moreover, no one was a fool. They couldn't just believe everything Lu said. Whether it was true or false still needed to be verified. Madame Wang asked Lu some questions in detail, such as how she got those things that normal people in the inner courtyard wouldn't have, who helped her, and how she knew the use of those things. Perhaps because she knew that at this point it didn't matter whether she said it or not. Lu said everything she knew. She answered whatever was asked. Even if she was repeatedly asked, she still spoke clearly and without any contradictions or omissions. In that case, there seemed to be no need to interrogate anyone else. Madame Wang was also prepared to punish Lu severely. She directly called the slave trader and was prepared to sell her far away as a guilty slave. However, at this moment, Lu's family members suddenly rushed forward and knelt in front of Madame Zhang. They cowed out loudly, "Madam, madam, please have mercy and save Lu. Lu did such a foolish thing because of you and was branded as a guilty slave. Lu's life is over. Ever since Lu came to your side, she has served you with all her heart. Can you bear to see her being trampled on? Madam, madam, I beg you, I beg you." Madame Zhang was innocent and unaffected. She had a soft and kind personality and easily trusted others. This was well known in the inner courtyard of the Luo family. These people firmly grasped this point and used it. However, he has a special liking for plum blossoms and is also very fond of plum blossoms cakes. Third miss, don't slander me. There are many people in the world who like plum blossoms. Is second master the only one who likes them? Lu refuted quickly and fiercely. Her attitude was so fierce that it made people speechless. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652937. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com mobile version reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 57. Lu's face turned pale. What she said just now was simply a confession out of guilt and desperation. Lu wanted to explain herself, but Jingwan did not give her a chance. She got someone to bring water and went to the falling plum house to get some plum blossom petals that she had collected a few days ago. Lu's hands were pressed into the water and washed roughly. The water was a little muddy. It was obvious that her hands were covered with a thick layer of powder. Seeing that her hands were covered with light red dots, Jingwan had an expression that said she had expected it. She then got someone to rub the plum blossom petals on Lu's arms, neck, and even face. No. Lu struggled with all her might. The petals were like poisonous snakes and ferocious beasts, making her extremely terrified. Everyone else looked at each other. Jingwan continued to look at her coldly. She did not show any other expression because she had expected this. Very soon, red rashes appeared on Lu's body. Lu howled. It hurts, it itches. She was probably afraid of hurting her delicate skin, so she did not dare to scratch it. However, in the end, she could not hold herself back and did it. Now that she had started, she could not care less. Streaks of bloody marks appeared on her skin. looking very frightening. If you don't stop her, her face will really be ruined. When that time comes, you won't be able to wait for a good price. Jingwan's words woke Lu Er's family up. They quickly went forward to grab Lu. At this point, everyone understood that Lu Er could not touch plum blossom petals. Think about it. If something could cause harm to oneself, then it was natural that such a thing would be hated. However, there was someone who showed extreme love for such a thing. Whether it was true love or fake love, there must be a reason. I didn't expect that there would be more than one person in the Luo family who likes to torture themselves. Jingwan glanced at the Lu family and said calmly. Previously, Luo Jingying had been torturing herself psychologically. Now, Lu Er was torturing herself physically. In fact, Mrs. Lu should be counted as well. Instead of living a good life, she insisted on making things difficult for herself, and then wanted to drag others down with her. Mrs. Lu happened to see Jingwan's meaningful glance. Her heart jumped. She always felt that Jingwan could see through her. She had a creepy feeling. However, after thinking about it, she felt that it shouldn't be that bad. Even the old madam only knew a little about her. She was just a little girl. No matter how capable she was, that was all. Thus, she suppressed the uneasiness in her heart. Jingwan didn't need to do anything after that. Madame Zhang's nannies would take care of it, secretly spying on the male master, persecuting the concubine, and framing the mistress. Clearly, she had the heart of a snake and scorpion, yet she dared to boast shamelessly that she was doing it for the mistress. In order to get Madame Zhang out of the picture, naturally, she couldn't give Lu Er a chance to refute. She pointed out some of Lu Er's daily trifles, one by one. For example, she liked to embroider plum blossoms on things she used, but she didn't break them. She also said that it bloomed on a branch and everyone saw it. It was better to share it with others than to share it with others. However, these remarks were occasionally heard by the second young master. She also said that some of her words and deeds didn't seem to be important, but when linked together, her intentions were clear. Lu Er couldn't refute it at all. At first, Madame Zhang's nannies only wanted to help Madame Zhang. As she spoke, she became more and more angry, because she wasn't making things up. It turned out that there were signs so early, but she didn't notice it. She even left such a poisonous snake by the madam's side. Madame Zhang didn't dare to believe that the final result of the matter would be like this. She thought that although she didn't owe the people around her a lot, she could still pat her chest and guarantee that she treated them well. She also never asked them to repay her. Instead, she received kindness with enmity. For a moment, she was disheartened. Her nature for decades couldn't be changed just because she said so. If Madame Zhang really became a qualified mistress of the inner house, she wouldn't be hers anymore. Her happiness, and even her friendship with Luo Rongyan would be completely erased. Jingwan sometimes hoped that her mother could change, but in fact, she never tried to do anything. Even if sometimes her role was reversed with Madame Zhang, she didn't care. She didn't expect Madame Zhang to do anything for her, and she didn't need it. As for Jingwan, deep in her heart, she thought, just let it be like this. It's fine as long as Madame Zhang maintains her nature. She can always find a way to protect her for a lifetime of peace and prosperity. Previously, she had been ignoring Madame Zhang. At this time, she walked forward and said, "Mother, don't think too much. It's fine as long as you have a clear conscience." Madame Zhang's fragile heart was instantly comforted. Although she was still sad about Lu Er's actions, she didn't continue to have a hopeless expression. Her daughter was right. She had a clear conscience. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes, straightened her back, and resumed the posture of a pampered noble lady. Without comparison, there was no way to distinguish good from bad. Not only did Madame Zhang not fulfill her duty as a mother, but she was also cared for and sheltered by her own daughter. Thinking about her own daughter, including Madame Wang's married daughter, Madame Wang still had to worry about them. Not to mention Madame Lu, who had a daughter like Luo Jingying. Not only did she plan for her all day long, but she also had to clean up her messes from time to time. How much time could she spend on herself? She didn't expect Lu Er to take care of her in turn. Why was Madame Zhang so lucky? Madame Wang's heart was bitter. Madame Wu also wondered if her daughter would be so considerate in the future. As for Madame Lu, she still looked calm on the surface, but her heart was full of holes from the devil of jealousy. She didn't know when it would be completely corroded and she would lose her mind and do something even crazier. The matter could be said to be full of twists and turns, but the perpetrator was indeed Lu. There was no doubt about this. It was naturally impossible for things to end like this. Jing Yuan would not allow it. She had to take this opportunity to pull out all the nails in Madame Lu's heart. As for people like Madame Luo and Madame Wang, after being reminded by Jing Yuan, they thought that there was more to this matter. After all, Lu was a little girl who was a bit scheming and inexperienced. She had always been well-behaved and did some small things very secretly. Otherwise, even if Madame Zhang didn't notice it, there was no reason why the people around her didn't notice it. But Lu suddenly became ruthless. Perhaps someone said something to her, or perhaps promised her something. Jing Yuan looked at Madame Luo, and Madame Luo happened to look over as well. When Jing Yuan saw the other party nod slightly, she already understood that her grandmother wanted to help her investigate to the end. Jing Yuan gently nodded in response. She naturally appreciated her grandmother's protection. After all, she was a girl in the boudoir. It was one thing to be a bystander, but it was another thing to completely intervene. Some families clearly needed a capable daughter-in-law, but before matchmaking for their children, if they heard that the girl was very capable in the boudoir, then they would not be happy. It was such a contradiction. Jing Yuan felt that although her marriage was almost settled, it was better not to have a fierce reputation. Jing Yuan had always thought of herself as a gentle girl. That's right, that was it. Although Lu was held down, her face was already scratched. Although the wound was not deep, if she did not take care of it properly, it would leave a very ugly scar. Appearance was really too important for a girl. Moreover, Lu's appearance was above average, and she also had her own ambitions. It could be imagined how much she valued her face. Destroying her face was more serious than taking her life. After the initial pain, her heart was filled with the desire to die. However, even if she wanted to die, she could not live anymore. After that, when she looked at Jing Yuan, her eyes were engraved with deep hatred. From her point of view, it was Jing Yuan who saw through her and destroyed her face. She had never seen such a vicious person. She opened her mouth and wanted to scold her. However, her family naturally would not let her have her way and hurriedly covered her mouth. Now that things had come to this, her daughter had no value, but she could not implicate her family because of her. Jing Yuan turned a blind eye to her resentment. Some people were just like that. They would never look for a reason from themselves. If it wasn't for the fact that she was the one who made the first move, even if she had some thoughts that she shouldn't have, no one would care about her. Jing Yuan knew that she should never underestimate small people. Whether it was in the history of her previous life or the history of this life, people who fell into the hands of small people could be found everywhere. However, people like Lu, who had a family and servants, lived in the harem. It was not that she was looking down on her, but even if she was lucky enough to survive after this incident, she would not be able to make any waves. Moreover, Jing Yuan lowered her head slightly. Her grandmother was a person who did not leave behind any future troubles. Although she had never done anything ruthless in front of her, she knew. Digression. As for the female lead's mother, the character setting was like this. If the relatives did not like her, they could just ignore her. In the future, they would write less about her. Also, the relatives expressed that they did not like the inner house fights. Although the main focus of the novel was the inner house fights, in fact, there would not be much inner house fights. The author was not good at writing inner house fights. Just these few people from the Luo family, they would have to be dealt with. https://www.yangguaiwo.com/11/11807/6652938. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.yanguiwo.com, Bikugo mobile reading website, yanguiwo.com. Chapter 58. She had just witnessed Madame Luo's ruthlessness and decisiveness, and now she was witnessing her gentleness and tolerance. Madame Luo had someone bring Lu in front of her, and looked at her condescendingly. Lu, who had a fierce expression just now, was now trembling uncontrollably. "I'll give you a chance. Tell me everything you've been hiding, and I'll give you a bottle of Yulu ointment." Yulu ointment had a miraculous effect on removing scars. During the reign of the late emperor, it had helped one of the late emperor's favored concubines to remove a terrifying scar, and thus became famous. However, that ointment was very expensive and very rare. It was almost exclusively used by the favored concubines in the palace. Before this, no one knew that Madame Luo had such an ointment, but since she said she had it, no one doubted her. Lu revealed a look of pleasant surprise. "Madam, are you serious? Are you doubting me?" Madame Luo said lightly. No. Lu hurriedly denied. Then, without thinking too much about it, she was afraid that Madame Luo would go back on her word. Like spilling beans, she rattled off the parts she had been hiding without stopping. She did not think at all about what would happen to the people she had implicated, nor did she think about whether she would have the fortune to enjoy the Yulu ointment even if she obtained it. The only remaining thought in her mind was that her face would not be disfigured, and that she would still be as beautiful as before. Sure enough, Lu's thoughts had been known by someone, and then she had been instigated intentionally or unintentionally. In this way, another person had been implicated. In addition to the person who had helped Lu before, there were a total of 4 people: the gatekeeper, the front yard, the backyard, and the falling plum house. They were really connected. Were the 3 people from before purely because they had been bribed by Lu to help her, or were they instructed by someone to make things convenient for her? No matter what the situation was, she caught them all. Perhaps because she was angry, she did not ask anything and gave them a good beating first. Not to mention that they had only helped a little and did not do anything wrong, but they had brought those dirty things into the backyard. Whether they had known about it or not, it was a huge mistake. All of them were either begging for mercy or yelling that they had been wronged. That miserable and bloody scene made many servants keep quiet out of fear. They only knew that the old madam was a kind person, but they didn't expect that when she was ruthless, she was even more frightening than the first madam they had always respected. They all shrank their necks and didn't dare to breathe loudly. They only silently warned themselves that in the future they must know their place and don't be blinded by greed. Otherwise, it would be their turn next time. Similarly, they were sold under the name of a guilty slave. As a result, even those who truly didn't know the truth would be able to reveal some of the dark secrets of the inner residence. Aside from the 4th branch, everyone in the 3rd branch was exposed. The 2nd branch was the least exposed, and most of the information came from concubine Bai. Now, other than Madame Wu and Madame Zhang, who still didn't have any self-awareness, many people's expressions turned ugly. Jingwan glanced at Mrs. Lu. The matter that was exposed had nothing to do with her, but because it involved the concubines of a 3rd branch, she felt ashamed. Oh, sure enough, she was the king of acting. Few people could compare to her. Gong Mama came over with the servant who was detained in the begonia house. Then, all the women of Kaling's family arrived. The men and the other men of the Luo family's servants were all guarded outside the 2nd gate. Madame Luo ordered people to take the main related personnel away and carefully interrogate them. They had to clearly explain what they knew. If they pointed out other people and there was no discrepancy between their confessions, they could be exempted from being sold. If they were meritorious, they would be rewarded with an additional 10 to 100 taels of silver. The head servant's monthly salary was only 1 tael of silver, so this reward was definitely a huge sum of money. After coercion and temptation, the result quickly became clear. Unexpectedly, the person behind the scenes turned out to be concubine Hua of the 3rd branch, Luo Jingqiang's biological mother. Even Kaling, who was by Madame Bai's side, was bribed by her. It turned out that the reason why Madame Bai acted so quickly was that Kaling added something to the first piece of snack she gave her. The servant girl who passed the message to Madame Zhang was also arranged by her. The servant who went to Jingwan's courtyard was the one who provided Lu with the prescription for those dirty things. She was also the key person to contact both sides. Before Gong Mama brought her here, she told her that her grandson's whereabouts had been found in a surprisingly short time. The reason why Kaling betrayed her master was that she received 100 taels of silver. Her good-for-nothing younger brother, who was always causing trouble, went to gambling dens and brothels at a young age. He owed a lot of debt and was found. Her parents didn't want to be kicked out of the house by the main family, so they made a scene and used filial piety to force their daughters. They said that they would buy out their relationship with them for 100 taels of silver and never look for them again in the future. Kaling knew that her master, Madame Bai, couldn't help her. Concubine Hua was brought over, and Luo Jingqiang, who insisted on following, was also brought over. Concubine Hua didn't have any makeup on. There were obvious wrinkles at the corners of her eyes, but her facial features were small and delicate. She was a beauty. Looking at it carefully, Luo Jingqiang looked more like her father. Concubine Hua was neither sad nor happy. Her eyes were exceptionally calm, as if she had already expected this situation. She quietly knelt in front of Madame Luo and calmly admitted all her sins. Because she was angry with the main mother, Madame Lu, for embezzling her daughter's dowry, she had the idea of revenge. Because she accidentally heard Madame Lu complaining about Madame Zhang's good fortune, she used this as an excuse to plot against the second branch and tried to frame Madame Lu. However, her ability was limited and she didn't succeed. Madame Luo, this concubine, knows that her sins are serious, but second young lady really didn't know anything. Please, for the sake of her being your granddaughter, let her marry in a dignified manner. Don't let this sinner affect her. Concubine Hua looked at Madame Luo with tears in the corners of her eyes. The depths of her eyes were filled with sadness and pleading. She was sincere, no longer as calm as before. Naturally, Jingwan had known about Concubine Hua for a long time. In the early years, Concubine Hua had fought with the Lu matriarch many times, but she was able to survive until now and raise Luo Jingqiang. It could be seen that she was not a simple person. However, as she gradually lived in seclusion, her sharp edges were mostly erased, and she became transparent. Moreover, she was a good mother. At the same time, Madame Lu also hurriedly knelt down and apologized, saying that she didn't really want to embezzle Luo Jingqiang's dowry. It was just because she was angry with her father. She didn't want to cause such a tragedy. Madame Luo fixed her eyes on the two of them. For a moment, the scene was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was waiting for Madame Luo's final decision. Luo Jingqiang covered her mouth with a handkerchief and didn't dare to cry out. She knew a lot of things, but she couldn't say it or do it. Otherwise, her life with her concubine would be even more difficult. From now on, Concubine Hua will be grounded until second young lady gets married. Then, she will move to Zhuangzi and never return. Third son's wife didn't discipline her properly, so she will be fined a year's salary. In addition, your third branch will add 30% of second young lady's dowry in addition to the public money. I will personally look at the list of dowry. Madame Bai had a miscarriage and injured her body. She will recuperate in her courtyard. Don't come out if you have nothing to do. As for the others, it's up to you whether to reward or punish them. She walked straight away. Madame Luo didn't even call Jingwan. It could be seen that she was really angry. Jingwan thought about it and still didn't follow. First, Madame Bai lost her child. Then she was betrayed. Now, she was grounded in disguise. In a fit of anger, she really fainted. Madame Lu knelt on the ground for a long time and didn't move. People who didn't know would think that she was distressed by the extra money. But in Jingwan's view, she was not only distressed, but also reflecting on herself. She was reflecting that she didn't do it carefully enough. She went for wool and came home shorn. Although she considered that she might be found out and found a scapegoat, in the end, she was indeed picked out perfectly. She also removed the thorn in Concubine Hua's side for many years. However, she didn't achieve her original goal. Instead, she was warned by Madame Luo and lost a lot of money. Jingwan was very curious. How did Madame Lu's heart become so twisted? But she didn't show it on her face at all. Madame Wang always had her own set of principles. Rewards and punishments were clear, but she also considered what Madame Luo said. Rewards were rewards, punishments were punishments. The two sides didn't offset each other. Those who should be beaten were beaten, those who should be sold were sold, and those who should be sold were sold, and those who were 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 sold were not kept. It could be said that she was merciless and benevolent. Jingwan asked Madame Zhang's servants to take her back, indicating that they should comfort her. In fact, Jingwan was not very worried about her. Her mother was easy to be sad, but sometimes she was open-minded. A maidservant wouldn't really hurt her. After a while, she would be fine. To put it nicely, she was open-minded. To put it bluntly, she was heartless. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652939. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Com Mobile Edition Reading Website, ambicken.com. Chapter 59. When Mrs. Lu turned around, there was a kind smile on her face. "What's the matter, third girl?" Jingwan was a little embarrassed. She pursed her lips and smiled. "Speaking of which, there's a small matter that I'm sorry about. When that old woman shouted about concubine buys matter to me, not only did she dirty the ears of Ding, General Manor's sister-son, but she also dirted the ears of fourth sister. After hearing such a dirty thing, fourth sister's heart must be uneasy. Third aunt, I'm afraid you'll have to spend some time to persuade her." Mrs. Lu's eyes darkened. "Suspect her? Warn her? Remind her? If you don't say it, I'm afraid I'll really be kept in the dark. It's also my fault. I spoil your fourth sister too much. I don't let her know anything. If she can be half as smart as you, I should pray to Buddha." Her tone was very helpless. Was she mocking her for knowing all kinds of dirty things at such a young age? Fourth sister is lucky. Even if she doesn't know anything for the rest of her life, it doesn't matter. Third aunt will always worry about her. I can't do it. If I don't know anything, won't I be bullied to death? As a mother, worrying about her daughter for the rest of her life, if it wasn't cursing her daughter to have a short life, what was it? No matter how good Mrs. Lu was at pretending, at this time, she stopped smiling. "Third girl, are you saying that your mother is not good?" "My mother is naturally good, but grandmother said that she is lucky. She doesn't know anything. There's no other way. As children, we are self-reliant. Maybe fourth sister will be like my mother in the future. That's really enviable." With Luo Jingying's temper, even if she met a good husband, she couldn't live as carefree as Mrs. Zhang. It was said that if she was unhappy, she asked for it. Looking for trouble all day long. No matter how deep the feelings were, they would disappear. Mrs. Lu still wanted to say something, but Jingwan didn't want to be long-winded with her. "I think third aunt still has things to do. After all, second sister will be married soon. Third aunt still has to add to her dowry. It's not easy work. Niece is going to see grandmother, so I'll take my leave first." Jingwan bent her knees, turned to the road of the main courtyard, and walked away. Concubine Hua and Luo Jingqiang were silent, but the servants who followed them lowered their heads. They couldn't wait to find a hole to hide and disappear in front of Mrs. Lu. Mrs. Lu was silent for a moment, but in the end, she didn't say anything. When she returned to the territory of the third branch, Mrs. Lu was about to call Concubine Hua and Luo Jingqiang, but Concubine Hua spoke first. "Foreign, the second young lady's dowry hasn't been embroidered yet. The Buddhist scriptures that Foreign ordered this servant to copy, for the old Foreign haven't been finished. This concubine is now a sinner. I'll take my leave first. But she knows that old madam is unhappy, but she still deliberately used my dowry to stab old madam. Didn't she think that old madam might vent her anger on us? It was impossible to say that she didn't feel resentful when she heard Jingwan's words before. That's because your third sister knows that old madam won't do anything to us. Your third sister has been steady since she was a child. She has always had a sense of propriety. Even if it's a servant, she won't be tired. Except for fourth young lady, she has never said harsh words to anyone. Your third sister was taught by old madam. Old madam can be said to be the wisest woman concubine Hua has ever seen. Concubine Hua, I know what to do. Concubine Hua knows that Chang'er is a well-behaved girl. Don't learn from Luo Jingying. You're so arrogant that you can't see the reality. You're smart, but you're often the victim of your own cleverness. Mrs. Lu asked someone to call Luo Jingying to the front. She didn't say anything and just looked at her with a gloomy face. When Luo Jingying came back from Begonia House, she was very nervous. Now that she saw her mother like this, she was scared. Her usual arrogant, flamboyant, elegant, and confident girl was completely gone. She became a bit timid. However, the more Luo Jingwan behaved like this, the angrier the Lu matriarch got. Even if she was in the wrong, she should not lower her head. She should maintain her composure. But look at her now. She was so timid that she could not even compare to those country bumpkins who came from a small place and had never seen the world. She thought about Luo Jingwan, who was calm in face and did everything appropriately. Even if her words were sarcastic, she could not find fault with them on the surface. That was the Lu matriarch's ideal daughter. Then she thought about the losses she had suffered today, and the anger she had suppressed could no longer be controlled. Luo Jingying staggered and almost fell to the ground. She felt a burning pain on her face. In addition, she sprained her neck. But she didn't feel the pain. She was stunned. Her appearance didn't make Mrs. Lu feel sorry for her. Instead, her eyes began to become bloodshot. She looked like a female beast that was about to lose her mind. The mama next to Mrs. Lu saw that something was wrong. She quickly asked someone to take Luo Jingying out and hugged Mrs. Lu. Luo Jingying, who was outside, heard the commotion inside. She slowly came back to her senses and covered her red and swollen face. She had never been hit since she was a child, let alone her mother, who treated her like a treasure. Even if she felt that her mother's mood was not right, she didn't know how to react. In addition to pain, she felt wronged. She felt very wronged. There was also an unspeakable resentment. She didn't know who this resentment was directed at. The room gradually quieted down. Mrs. Lu didn't call Luo Jingying to come in. Instead, she asked a maidservant to come out and tell her to go back to her courtyard and reflect on her mistakes. There was no time limit. Even though Luo Jingying came back to her senses, she was still a little absent-minded. Her mind was in a mess, and she needed to calm down. Therefore, she didn't say anything and obediently went back. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652940. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com Mobile Edition. Chapter 60. Jingwan went to the main courtyard. Regarding this matter, she did not mention a word to Madame Luo. Concubine Bai, on the other hand, could be said to be the most unlucky and suffered the most. Originally, she hoped that Luo Rongyan would come back to see her and comfort her gently and considerately. She also thought about how to use this opportunity to win his pity. Unfortunately, no matter how much she thought about it, it was in vain. Luo Rongyan did not come back until the evening. He was drunk and was directly sent to Falling Plum House. When the accident happened, it was unknown whether the servant who went to find him reported it to him or not. After Madame Bai heard this, she was so angry that she burst into tears. The things in the room were completely smashed, and the servants around her were all angered by her. They directly threw things at them. Being smashed was considered light, but the closer they were to her, the more serious the injury. Because of the ringtone incident, she felt that everyone was playing tricks behind her back. She cursed and scolded crazily. Concubine Ping, who was in the same courtyard, did not make a sound and pretended not to hear anything. Concubine Ji could not bear it. Although her two daughters also lived alone in a courtyard, they were separated from their courtyard by only one wall. With Madame Bai making such a ruckus, it was difficult for the two sisters to pretend not to hear. Concubine Ji was very angry. If her two daughters were led astray, she would tear Madame Bai alive. However, Madame Bai was now a lunatic. If she went to the door now, she did not know what would happen. She could only swallow her anger. She turned and went to her two daughters. Similar situations like this would happen from time to time in the backyard of many noble houses in the capital. The real lively place was the backyard of a third branch. Madame Lu finally recovered a little. Before she could completely calm down, a servant reported that the third master had returned and brought a woman, a very beautiful woman. Madame Lu had long been accustomed to this kind of thing. She did not care much at first. However, what happened next made her anger rise again. That woman did not come to see her immediately. Luo Rongping arranged a courtyard for her alone. If that was all, it would be fine. Luo Rongping sent his own people to serve that woman. In the past, the women who entered the backyard of the third branch were all arranged by her. If Luo Rongping cared, at most, he would say a few words. But this time, he clearly showed that he treated that woman differently. He was protecting that woman. This was an unprecedented threat. Mrs. Lu cheered herself up. She wanted to see that woman. She wanted to see what kind of beauty she was. She wanted to see Luo Rongping, a man who valued power more than anything else, no longer cared about his reputation, and wanted to tear his face with her. Madame Lu took a large group of people to kill. The small courtyard was originally well decorated. The servants were busy going in and out. When they saw Madame Lu, many people could not help but tremble. Those who were closer to her had to bite the bullet and salute her. Those who were far away saw that the situation was not good and directly took a detour. The first room to be cleaned up was the outer room of the bedroom. Under the warm candlelight, Luo Rongping was holding a woman gently and carefully. Although that woman was still some distance away from being able to cause the downfall of a country, she was indeed a first-class beauty, gentle, coquettish, and lovable. Looking at Luo Rongping, her eyes were full of deep affection and admiration. It seemed that he was her everything. Without him, she could not live alone. The deep affection between the two of them instantly pierced Mrs. Lu's heart. Before she got married, although Madame Lu did not like Luo Rongping, when things were settled, she also imagined that her husband would treat her wholeheartedly, protect her, and pamper her. Unfortunately, when he found out that his Tongfang was pregnant, he stubbornly refused to let that woman have an abortion. On the second day of her marriage, he wanted her to promote that woman to a concubine. All of her beautiful fantasies were instantly shattered. Luo Rongping was the same as her. He was dissatisfied with this marriage. From the beginning, the two of them treated each other with respect. But because each of them had their own desires, they only maintained the superficial relationship between husband and wife. Between them, there was not even a moment of tenderness. "You brought someone back. Why didn't you tell this concubine? Now, you have to personally arrange it. Isn't this concubine's fault?" Seeing the two of them whispering sweet nothings to each other, Madame Lu put on a fake smile and said. That woman seemed to be startled by Madame Lu's sudden words. She suddenly raised her head and then hurriedly got up. "This concubine greets Madame." Madame Lu's mouth twitched. Just as she was about to speak, Luo Rongping leisurely raised his head and swept a glance at her. His eyes were obviously cold. Be careful. Don't hurt the child in your belly. Madam is a virtuous and magnanimous woman. She will definitely not pay attention to etiquette at this juncture. Listen to what he was saying. Was she really virtuous or just pretending to be magnanimous? Didn't he know Luo Romping? Didn't she hear that it was a sarcastic warning? She didn't say anything or do anything, but he was already protecting her. And this woman was pregnant. At that moment, Madame Lu was so angry that her blood almost rushed to her heart. At the same time, she felt a chill run from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. Madame Lu thought that she knew Luo Romping's character very well. It was impossible for him to fall in love with a woman. But now, reality slapped her in the face. It wasn't that this man didn't know how to fall in love with a woman, but he hadn't met that woman yet. Although this woman was hypocritical, pretentious, and foxy in her eyes, a man who fell in love with a woman was unreasonable. It was easy for him to spoil his concubine and neglect his wife, even if she didn't know how long his love would last. Madame Lu felt an unprecedented fear. She wasn't sure how far Luo Romping would go for this woman. She was able to gain a foothold in the Luo family and do whatever she wanted in the third branch because of Luo Romping's indifference. Although she disdained and was unwilling to accept it, she had to admit that if a woman didn't have a strong family, she still had to rely on her husband's support. But when this man not only didn't support her, but also helped another woman, even if she had 1,000 abilities and 10,000 means, it was useless. Compromise? Should she put down her pride and compete with these vixens for his favor and beg him to lower his curtain? She wanted to be strong for half of her life, but she couldn't do it, especially when she didn't have a good impression of this man. She wanted to dominate him because he was her legal wife. Even if she didn't want him, no one else could touch him. She wanted to dominate him for the sake of her children's future. That woman gently pushed Luo Romping's hand away and smiled embarrassedly. Furin is virtuous, but this lowly concubine can't be arrogant because of your favor. She looked at Madame Lu. She looked like a weak willow branch in the wind, but she still respectfully bowed. This lowly concubine originally wanted to serve tea with Furin, but if I go now, I'm afraid that I will disturb Furin's rest. I didn't want Furin to go personally. This lowly concubine is really guilty. I hope Furin can forgive me. The corner of Madame Lu's mouth twitched. She felt like she had met her match, but this kind of opponent made her completely unhappy. This woman was not easy to deal with. With Luo Romping's help, it was very difficult to trample her to death and get rid of the bastard in her belly that may threaten her son. Look at Mimi. I know that he loves Mimi dearly. Serving tea is just like that. It doesn't matter if you do it or not. Who can say anything about the person in Ye's heart? Your body is heavy now, so the most important thing is to take care of yourself. If you need anything, just tell me. It was natural for a concubine to serve tea with the head wife. If she didn't go through this procedure, she wouldn't be recognized by the head wife. Even if she understood the current situation, Madame Lu's resentment was too heavy today. She couldn't help but speak with sarcasm. Luo Romping looked at Madame Lu's eyes coldly. He was about to open his mouth, but that woman quietly pulled his sleeve. Mimi is new here, so I naturally have to trouble Jie a bit. Jie, please don't dislike Mimi for being troublesome. She obediently changed the way she addressed Madame Lu. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652941. HTML. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 61. Madame Lu's nails almost dug into her flesh. The third branch didn't have much money, so she had to live a frugal life. Luo Romping was like most men who spent money recklessly. Now he was going to spend his money recklessly on a woman. Good, very good. And this woman really couldn't be underestimated. The first time they fought, she was defeated. Madame Lu had never been defeated like this in her life. She must not fall into her hands. Luo Rongbing was so ruthless, so Madame Lu didn't want to lower herself. She stopped smiling and said with a cold face, "Whatever you say, it's naturally what it is. But Huan Yang, it's better to change this name. No matter what character it is, it will clash with the third daughter's name. If mother knows, she will not be happy. This concubine will take my leave." Luo Rongbing's face changed. He dismissed the servants and took the woman's hand. "In the future, this prince will call you Huan Yang, okay?" In fact, it had nothing to do with Jingwan, but Madame Lu was right. Madame Luo would care. Even if he was unhappy, he had to change it. "It's just a name. You can call me whatever you want." Huan Yang leaned on his shoulder. "To be able to receive your sincerity, this concubine would be willing to die immediately. Don't talk nonsense. We and our children have a long life in the future. This prince has already told you that this relationship with Madame Lu is just a matter of face. If she does anything to you, you don't have to tolerate her. She is a person who cares about her face. She won't reveal it herself. So you don't have to look at her face and live carefully. Madame is the wife, and this concubine is the concubine. Even if Madame does something, it's natural. It's not good to make a scene. As the saying goes, paper can't wrap fire. If someone knows, it will be bad for your reputation. This concubine doesn't want to see. Moreover, it's this concubine and Madame who stole you. It's understandable that Madame is unhappy. So, this concubine won't have a conflict with Madame. But you won't let yourself suffer. So, you can rest assured. You don't talk about snatching. I'm yours." Huan Yang's gentleness and thoughtfulness made Luo Rongbing feel very comfortable. Lady Huan smiled tenderly and sweetly called out, "Master." "By the way, Master, Madame mentioned third young lady just now, second brother's legitimate daughter. The old Madame likes her very much. Don't get close to her. She is influenced by the old Madame and doesn't like concubines. If you make her unhappy, even I can't protect you." Luo Rongbing said. Luo Rongbing was not afraid of Jingwan. In his opinion, she was a girl who would get married sooner or later. Even if she suppressed his daughter, he didn't think much of it. The relationship between the third branch and the second branch had never been good. No matter whether she married well or not, it had little to do with him. In this regard, Luo Rongbing was very clear. As for his legitimate daughter, she was always at loggerheads with her. He had said it once or twice, but later, he was too lazy to say it again. However, his concubine was different. If something happened, the old Madame could kill her with a word. So, the best choice was to stay far away from her. Lady Huan's eyes flashed in a place that Luo Rongbing couldn't see. This concubine knows. Let's not talk about how angry Mrs. Lu was when she went back. Anyway, the Luo family basically knew that Luo Rongbing brought someone back and was pregnant. After all, there were many people present. If the third branch could put spies in other people's courtyards, naturally, there were spies in their courtyard. Gong Mama was very clear about these twists and turns. She often listened to 30% of it. Even if she didn't eavesdrop in person, she could think about 70% of it. In this way, Jingwan could know more details than others. Jingwan lay on the soft couch and let the maidservant massage her. Although the technique was not as good as Gong Mama's, it was not bad. Gong Mama's foot was injured, but she still wandered around her during the day. Although she was sure that it was much better, Jingwan still didn't want her to continue to be tired. She didn't want to go back to rest, so she let her sit aside and watch. Hearing Gong Mama's soft voice, Jingwan, who was originally sleepy, woke up a little. She said suspiciously, "Third aunt bullied our second branch like this. I was still thinking about how to repay her. I didn't expect that someone would give me a pillow just as I was about to doze off. It's really timely, and it's the most unlikely person. I think it's a coincidence. That woman was probably raised by Third Master outside for a long time. She just found out that she was pregnant today, so she took this opportunity to ask Third Master to bring her back. After all, she was born of a concubine, and her reputation was even worse. According to how much Third Master cares about that woman, it's not difficult to achieve the purpose of entering the Luo family. Gong Mama said, "Well, it's probably really a coincidence. If it was done by someone, they would have schemed against Third Uncle and the Third Branch long ago. Third Uncle is not worthy of being schemed against by outsiders. In our own family, Third Uncle can't threaten Eldest Uncle, so Eldest Uncle naturally won't waste such effort. And my father really doesn't put Third Uncle in his eyes. For the time being, let's wait and see. If the Third Branch is lively enough, then we'll just watch. If it's not lively enough, then we can add firewood," Jingwan said, and her voice gradually lowered, as if she was about to fall asleep. Gong Mama's expression was unfathomable. Yes, Luo Romping is not worthy of being schemed against by outsiders, but that person can't bear to see you being bullied. If someone bullies you, you don't need to do anything. He will help you get back 100 times or 1,000 times. Knowing that you don't get along well with the Third Branch, he has already started to scheme before you came to the capital. It's really not a coincidence that Luo Romping didn't bring that woman back at any other time. But today, after all, he can't make Madame Lu so angry at any other time. Li Hongyuan casually flipped through the things he got from his so-called third brother and fourth brother. If these things were thrown out, it would definitely be enough to make them suffer. However, it was far from enough to directly overthrow them. However, no matter how useful these things were, Li Hongyuan was not interested. After flipping through them, he threw them aside. Eunuch Mu poured him a cup of tea, and then stood aside with his head lowered like a wooden stake. Wan Wan and Chun Jingmin's engagement is basically set. Li Hongyuan, who seemed to be thinking and lost in thought for a moment, asked. His tone was indifferent and unusually calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. However, in Eunuch Mu's view, this was the most abnormal. Miss Luo was going to be engaged to someone else. His master should be gloomy and thinking of ways to kill Qin Zhengmin. The calmer he was, the more terrifying it was. Eunuch Mu couldn't help but reach out to wipe the sweat on his forehead. His master knew everything about Miss Luo's big matter. Even so, Eunuch Mu didn't dare to disagree. But would his answer make his master immediately furious and directly wring his head off? "Master, it should be like this. Sun Yilin sent away Zi to Wan Wan?" Li Hongyuan continued to ask. "Master, yes." Eunuch Mu's back began to sweat. Who would save him? Sun Yilin's status is barely enough. Chun Jimin's is really too low. For this imperial examination, let them know. As long as his standard is passable, he will at least be the third. Yes. Master, what do you want to do? Have you given up on Miss Luo? Otherwise, why did you not trample on the man who was about to become her fiancé and even put in so much effort to help him? Sometimes, the three people in the first place were personally appointed by the emperor. It was really difficult to influence the emperor's decision. It would be best if Chun Zhengmin happened to be favored by the emperor. But now that you have said something, we can't just wait. For insurance, we have to find a way to let Qin Zhengmin make his presence known in front of the emperor in advance. It was easy to say, but too difficult to do. It was true that a word from the master was enough to make the subordinates run out of legs. Since Sun Yilin has already entered the imperial court as an official, how can he still have time to go to the flower market and neglect his proper duties? Aren't you the one who neglects his proper duties the most, master? If you want to find trouble for others, but don't have time to contact Miss Luo, just say so. If Chun Zhengmin is not at the Chun residence, then he is at the Luo residence. Is he preparing to become a bookworm? Young Master Chun has been in the capital for a few months, but the number of times he has been to the Luo residence can be counted on one hand. Although he doesn't participate in literary gatherings or social gatherings every few days, he also doesn't blindly read books. Today is the first time he has seen Miss Luo in the Luo residence. Digression. https://www.bicken. com/11/11807/6652942. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 62. Sure enough, how could his master not care about Miss Luo? Although he didn't know why he only separated those young masters from Miss Luo instead of killing her directly, he must have other plans. Eunuch Mu never thought that his master was suddenly soft-hearted and didn't involve the innocent. Those who dared to covet Miss Luo deserved to die, and those who got involved with Miss Luo were also unforgivable. Even if they didn't die, they would definitely be skinned alive. I don't want the third branch of the Luo family to be too harmonious, and I don't want the Luo family's backyard to be in chaos. Master, don't worry. Even if there is a bad reputation, it will only be the third branch of the Luo family and won't involve others. And it won't disturb the future princess at all. Luo Rongping's ambition can still be allowed to grow a little more. With his relationship with this prince's big brother, I can help to pull some strings for him. His ability was so weak, and he climbed so slowly. It would be hard to find an excuse to deal with him. Yes, I feel a little tired recently and need to go to White Dragon Temple to rest for a while. Eunuch Mu was slightly stunned. Why did he suddenly change the topic? Yes, no matter what the reason was, he didn't need to think too much, let alone hesitate. He just needed to do it properly for his master. After a while, Li Hongyuan spoke again. Mu, and you are becoming more and more careless in serving me. Eunuch Mu was so shocked that his soul almost left his body. He hurriedly knelt down. Please forgive me, master. In the face of Li Hongyuan's questioning, don't try to explain, let alone refute. You just need to apologize and then beg for his forgiveness. If you can still live, then quickly reflect, find out your mistakes, and make up for them. Before his master lost his temper, Eunuch Mu thought hard about what he had done. What had he done to make his master dissatisfied? Under what circumstances did his master say that he was careless? It seemed that, suddenly, Eunuch Mu thought of a possibility. Please give me another chance, master. Li Hongyuan raised his eyes and glanced at him lightly. You are not hopeless. Eunuch Mu was terrified. Li Hongyuan was the exact opposite. He didn't mind his subordinates guessing his thoughts. If you could guess his thoughts accurately, or even if he didn't say anything, you could do it beautifully. He would even reward you generously. Unfortunately, his thoughts had always been strange and unpredictable. Sometimes it didn't seem obvious, but no one knew what he was thinking. This was only for those who understood his nature. If it were those who didn't know, they would be as ignorant as fools. They wouldn't even know when they offended him and were secretly dealt with. Eunuch Mu grew up with him. It was good enough that he could guess it once or twice out of 10 times. Of course, these were generally private affairs. Eunuch Mu was not qualified to intervene in other matters. In the past few years, his master's biggest private matter was Miss Luo. As long as that person's matter was handled well, he could be exempted from responsibility if he made mistakes in other places. Therefore, not only Eunuch Mu, it could be said that everyone close to Li Hongyuan was eager for that person to marry into Jin Wangfu as soon as possible, so that they could tie down their master, the King of Hell. Coaxing the future Wang Fei, well, even if you had no ability, you could live the most unscrupulously. It was simply an open secret in their circle. Qin Tianming hasn't come yet? He's getting more and more arrogant. Ben Wang can't invite him. Eunuch Mu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Qin Tyrant has arrived and is waiting outside. It must be said that Qin Tianming was really wronged. When he learned that Jin Wangye summoned him, he saw that the sky was dark and quietly came over because they basically met at night. Today, he kept feeling that his eyelids were twitching. It could be said that he came much earlier than before and had been waiting outside the study for Jin Wangye. However, When he appeared and paid his respects, he was directly ignored. He stood there like a wooden stake for nearly 2 hours. There was no tea or water. He stood there and couldn't move at will. His legs were about to stiffen. In the end, the king of hell forgot that there was someone outside. How could he be so aggrieved? When Eunuch Mu called him in, he breathed a sigh of relief and tightened at the same time. He was glad that he didn't have to continue to stand there as punishment. At the same time, he was very nervous. Under normal circumstances, this master wouldn't summon them. Basically, he would only come when there was an important matter. But after thinking for a long time, he didn't feel that there was anything important recently. Could it be that the fire in by Ri Flower Market was actually related to this person? This official greets Wang Ye. Long live Wang Ye. Li Hongyuan didn't wake him up and just left him hanging. Whether it was the death penalty or a reprieve, he just didn't give him a happy ending. After all, Qin Tianming was not Fu Yunting. Not to mention that he was at the same age as Fu Yunting's father. He had led troops to kill enemies and experienced the baptism of blood and death. Even though Fu Yunting's wisdom far exceeded that of his peers due to the changes in the Fu family, he was still inferior to Qin Tianming. Although he felt uneasy facing Li Hongyuan, in fact, he was not too worried. He believed that he had never done anything that was disadvantageous to this person. At most, he would be tortured by him, but he would never take his life. Although the person in front of him was often said to be temperamental, sinister, and ruthless, and had no other good points except for his face, people who came into contact with him in private would know that although his methods were ruthless and his emotions were erratic, he was definitely not someone who couldn't control himself and casually disregarded human life. What was even more ridiculous was that he was also proficient in the art of war. Occasionally, when they talked about it, they always felt that it wasn't just an armchair strategist. No matter if it was arranging troops, deploying troops, dispatching generals, or all kinds of strategies, all of them showed that he was an outstanding general who had experienced countless battles. Jin Wangye Li Hongyuan had never left the capital since he was born. Since childhood, his temper was irritable, and he did things as he pleased. His talent and learning were mediocre. He was the most troublesome person for the Tai tutors. They had never heard that he had learned anything like the art of war. But in fact, the truth hidden under the surface made people who came into contact with this truth feel stormy waves. When did he learn these things, and how did he learn these things? Moreover, after their careful observation and deliberation, they found out that even the emperor didn't know about him. Before the age of 16 he was in the palace, but to be able to do so many things behind the emperor's back, what kind of ability was this? It could be understood that he was hiding it for self-protection. After all, he didn't have a biological mother when he was born. But to be able to hide it so deeply, it couldn't be explained with just the word smart. Although the emperor couldn't be called a wise ruler for thousands of years, his ability wasn't bad. Although he wasn't as good as the top, he was still better than the bottom. Regarding the handling of the country's major affairs, it wasn't as smooth as his heart, nor was it satisfactory. Most of the time, he could still get the approval of the courtiers. This was an emperor who had been in the imperial court for 20 to 30 years. But when he left the imperial court in private, in the imperial court, he basically didn't open his mouth. Regarding the matters of the world, Jin Wangye could often hit the nail on the head and hit the nail on the head. Regarding the matters that they argued with until their faces turned red, he could solve it with just a few words. This made some old foxes admire him so much that they would prostrate themselves in admiration. And through these people, he would present the best method to the emperor. This time, he would let this person be in the limelight. Next time, it would be another person, very good at balancing the situation in the imperial court. They didn't know how many people were controlled by Jin Wangye, but they faintly felt that even if he didn't control half the courtiers, through his various arrangements, perhaps he had invisibly controlled half of the Qi Yuan dynasty. He wasn't an emperor, but early on, he did what an emperor should do, and had the tendency to be an emperor for thousands of years. This was wisdom that far surpassed his age. shrewdness that far surpassed ordinary people. To be able to do this, it was still very inconceivable. But they were also willing to follow him and assist him. They never doubted that this country wouldn't be his. After all, compared to him, the other princes were simply fireflies competing for splendor with the moon. Even if the emperor passed the throne to the other princes in the future, they probably wouldn't mind being a rebellious courtier and helping Jin Wangya seize the throne. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652943 HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will handle it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, ambicken.com. Chapter 63. What he had was not only a good appearance, but also a smart brain and a good body. He was blessed by nature in all aspects. Therefore, he was the fastest and the best among the princes in both literary and martial arts. He had learned everything he needed to learn in his previous life. Therefore, he was cheated and schemed against. However, these things made him the final winner. Although it was not a perfect victory, in just a few years, his ability was comparable to the most brilliant monarch in history. Moreover, he had been in that position for nearly 20 years. To him, government affairs were as simple as eating and drinking. He had a bad temper. This could be said to be a natural trait. However, in his previous life, he learned to restrain himself. Later on, because of the unforeseen events, he completely released his nature. Therefore, although he was the divine lord in the eyes of the people, he was a complete tyrant in the eyes of the courtiers. He was the emperor who confiscated property, the monarch who exterminated clans. He had killed too many people, especially for when everything started over again, he no longer learned the things he had learned. He no longer admired his father, and he no longer restrained his temper. Since there were people who were willing to protect him, he naturally could not let them down. He did as he pleased. If he was happy, he would teach you a lesson. If he was unhappy, he would teach you a lesson. You have raised a good son. While Qin Tianming's thoughts were in a mess, Li Honyuan suddenly spoke. Qin Tianming was startled. For a moment, he could not tell whether Li Honyuan was speaking the truth or not. Your Highness, please enlighten me. Even if he guessed, he might not be able to guess it. Thus, he decided to ask directly to avoid making himself even more embarrassed. Qin Tianming, you are a smart person. You are also capable in other aspects, but it is a pity that you are not good at raising children. As the saying goes, it is the father's fault if he does not teach them well. If you are busy with work and do not have time to teach them well, this prince does not mind letting you take a long vacation. You can come back when you have taught them well. Li Honyuan held the teacup and poked it with the lid, but it didn't enter his mouth. He put it back, and there was a soft, crisp sound. Qin Tianming knew that Prince Jin was not joking. If he said he would do it, he would do it. He might not be able to take off his official position directly, but even if he could, he would not do so. Prince Jin had always been good at borrowing power and driving a wedge between people. Although the Marquis of Champion was also glorious, if he lost his position as the left commander-in-chief, the Marquis of Champion would suffer a disastrous decline, and his branch would suffer the harshest blow. After all, he did not have a good relationship with his father in the early years, and they almost broke off. Right now, the champion constabulary seemed to be in harmony, and his father was also particularly fond of him. Although what he fancied was only the power in his hands, the world thought that he compromised with his father for the sake of his reputation. If that was really the case, he wouldn't have secretly submitted to the Empress and the eldest prince Kang Qinhuang when the champion constabulary was supporting the fourth prince, the Gong Qinhuang. Although there was a little accident, the master he was ultimately loyal to was Jin Qinhuang. To climb to the position of the left commander-in-chief, he had paid too much. If he lost it like this, it would not be as simple as being unwilling. Right now, he just wanted to immediately rush back and beat up those evil creatures. He wanted to ask them which one of them ate the bear's heart and leopard's gall, daring to provoke this living king of hell, a person that all the princes and concubines, as well as the emperor's peers, did not dare to provoke. What kind of thing was the grandson of the champion constabulary, the son of the left commander-in-chief? It's this official's fault. Please give this official another chance. This official will go back and teach them well. Everyone says that you are a smart person, very good at judging the situation. Moreover, compared to other people, you are not so afraid of Ben Wang. Fortunately, once you have set your mind on something, you will not easily have second thoughts. However, is Ben Wang the master that you have set your mind on? If he was still calm before, Qin Tianming really had some fear at this time. However, at this time, swearing to express his loyalty was useless. Prince Jin did not believe in these things. After calming himself down, he somewhat hoarsely opened his mouth. This is the so-called, a woman dresses up for the one who likes her. A gentleman dies for the one who understands him. Although this official and my father do not get along, this official has no doubts about the belief of being loyal to the monarch and defending the country. I hope that Qi Yuan will be strong, and I hope that the world will be peaceful. Li Honyuan was silent for a moment. Has Ben Wang ever told you that the world is not that important in Ben Wang's eyes? Qin Tianming suddenly raised his head and looked at Li Honyuan in disbelief. His lips trembled, but not a word came out. He wanted to say that it was impossible, but he could feel that Prince Jin was not joking. You want to ask why? Since it is not that important, why do you have to be so deliberate? Only with supreme power can one do whatever one wants. The country is not the most important to this prince, but it is something that must be controlled. Furthermore, this prince believes that the possibility of this prince becoming a tyrant is far greater than that of a wise ruler. Therefore, you can still reconsider and choose another wise ruler. Qin Tianming thought that he had long been able to remain calm, but now he had to admit that he was a little confused. Seeing Qin Tianming's appearance, Li Honyuan suddenly smiled with an unknown meaning. It was a smile that made countless women infatuated. But Qin Tianming was so shocked that all the blood in his body froze. The bloodthirst and killing intent in his eyes were so obvious. At this moment, he really felt it. Prince Jin, Li Honyuan, the side that people did not know about was admirable. The side that people knew about was real and not a disguise. He did not lose his mind. He knew what he was doing. He really decided your life and death based on his mood. Wang Ye. Qin Tianming suppressed the strong desire to run away. If you lose your life, everything is empty talk. This official also firmly believes that whether Wang Ye is a wise monarch or a tyrant, you will certainly not joke about Qi Yuan's foundation. Scared? Li Honyuan relaxed his body and leaned back. He seemed to be in a good mood, very leisurely and contented. Qin Tianming lowered his head and remained silent. He was really scared. Whether you are loyal or not, it doesn't matter. If you have the ability, if you have the courage, find another master, or even report to Fu Wang, Ben Wang will not frown. If Ben Wang is brought down by you, then it's your own incompetence. If you can't bring down Ben Wang, then it's your bad luck. Simply arrogant to the point of conceit. Qin Tianming did not dare to question. Mu Gonggong did not dare to question. And the shadow guards in the dark did not dare to question. Go back and train the young masters well. You are a tiger general, so don't raise a nest of dog sons. Ben Wang will not be stingy with the tiger cubs. Ben Wang is not afraid of being overshadowed. If you have the ability, one duke and one marquis in a family is nothing. If you have 2 dukes in a family, even if you have 3 dukes and 4 dukes, I can still help you. The stick was ruthless, but the date was also extremely tempting. Qin Tianming had not yet broken free from the shock when he heard the words, which aroused the courage and ambition in his bones. The combination of the two together made his body involuntarily tremble. Wang Ye, get out of here. This official will leave now. Qin Tianming stood up and staggered, not because his legs were numb, but because he was a little weak. He did not dare to lose his manners, so he slowed down his movements and retreated out of the study. The night wind blew, and his back was cold. Qin Tianming was shocked to realize that his clothes were wet. What happened today could not be considered as making things difficult for him. However, the psychological pressure he was under was unprecedented. Qin Tianming returned to the champion Marquis Fu and called his sons, regardless of whether they were Di or Shu, to the study. Even if they were asleep or still performing the rites, he could not hesitate for a moment. Each one of them was at a loss. What was going on? What did you all do today? Tell me one by one. They did not dare to disobey their father's orders. Starting from the eldest, they began to tell the details one by one. The more he listened, the tighter Qin Tianming's brows furrowed. It was not because they had discovered something big, but on the contrary. The most outrageous behavior was just going to the brothel, drinking a little wine, or gambling a little. The Gongzi brothers of the capital, 10 times out of 10, did these things. It was nothing. Just these, Jin Qinhuang would definitely not ask. Are you sure you are not hiding anything? After getting their affirmative nod, I will say it again. No details can be left out. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652944. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Com mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 64. Qin Tianming's brows furrowed like a river. He couldn't find any suspicious points. Moreover, according to Jin Qinhuang's temperament, if he was present and offended him, he definitely wouldn't remain silent. But an unintentional sentence, a small matter, even if it offended Jin Qinhuang, it wouldn't reach his ears. What was going on? Qin Tianming probably couldn't think of it, even if he cracked his head. It was just because his youngest son kicked over the black peony in anger. The Luo family's daughter, Jingwan, was distressed for the flower, and Li Hongyuan was distressed for her. At that time, he couldn't show that he cared about her, so he could only find someone to settle the account behind her back. Qin Tianming's youngest son didn't have the qualifications to stand in front of Li Hongyuan, so he could only do it. In desperation, Qin Tianming gave his sons a confinement order. If they had official business, they were to return home immediately after finishing. If they had nothing to do, they weren't allowed to step out of the house half a step. From today onwards, the books that were thrown away were to be picked up again, and the martial arts that were abandoned were to be picked up again. Several Qin Gongzi were stupefied by their father's move. Those who had official positions were fine, but those who didn't have official positions and loved to play, such as Qin Tianming's youngest son, were simply asking for their old lives. Just as they were about to habitually refute a few words, their father threw them a glare, and they obediently shut their mouths. When his mother was protecting him, he could still be unyielding, but his mother wasn't unprincipled in protecting him. When it came to serious matters, one wrong move, and she dealt with him more ruthlessly than his father. Qin Tianming suspected that this matter was likely caused by this youngest son. Usually, he was the one who could cause trouble the most, so he didn't have a good expression. Compared to other people, he was more cautious and warned that if he dared to sneak away, he would directly break his legs. However, it was Qin Tianming's simple and crude approach that made his branch more prosperous, and also allowed his youngest son to avoid the retaliatory blow caused by the fire in the flower market. Qin Tianming could only temporarily solve the matter like this, but he still didn't know if that master would be satisfied. The person Qin Tianming was thinking about someone else at this moment. It must be said that this ferocious beast was not a vegetarian to begin with. It had always restrained itself from eating meat. However, today it suddenly licked 2 mouthfuls of fragrant, fatty meat. It was the piece of meat that it had been longing for a long time. It was only because of many restrictions that it could not swallow it whole that it restrained itself. Perhaps it was because of the environment, but at that time, giving up on the fatty meat in its mouth was not something unbearable. However, now that it was late at night, it could not help but recall the taste. It seemed to be incomparably delicious, yet it also felt like it had not tasted anything. The more it was like this, the more unbearable it became, and the more restless the evil fire in its body became. When he bathed, he directly soaked in cold water. Eunuch Mu trembled with fear when he saw this. It was still a little cold at night. What if the cold air entered his body? In fact, what Eunuch Mu was more puzzled was why his master had wronged himself like this. He was clearly a prince, and had a reputation of being dissolute. Even if he changed his bed every night, no one could say anything about it. In fact, as far as he knew, his master really did not have a single woman. Sometimes, he even suspected that his master had a hidden disease. However, as a close attendant, he was very clear about his master's physical condition. It could not be better. After eliminating all the possibilities, the only reason left was the most unlikely one. His master was keeping his chastity for Miss Luo. What was the reason that could make such a proud and honorable person like his master do this? And it was under the circumstances that the other party was completely unaware of it. They knew that his master had a secret because he had not concealed it and did not care about letting them know. As for what the secret was, they had no way to find out, and they did not dare to find out. Li Hongyuan soaked in the cold water for 2 hours, but it seemed that there was no effect. Eunuch Mu was called in by Li Hongyuan. He originally thought that he was going to wait on him to sleep. Unexpectedly, Li Hongyuan had already put on his clothes. He was wearing a black brocade robe, a belt around his waist, and a pair of brocade shoes of the same color. In addition, he had no other accessories. But his hair was still wet and hanging down, which did not cover his coldness. On the contrary, for some reason, he made people more and more afraid to approach him. Eunuch Mu had to go forward to dry Li Hongyuan's hair. It took him some time, and then he automatically tied up his hair. He had made a mistake once, and he could not make the same mistake again. It was not the first time for him to go out at night. But Eunuch Mu had a feeling that the purpose of tonight was different from before. The secret guards who followed Li Hongyuan thought that he had something important to do. When they arrived outside the courtyard wall of the Luo family, they thought of a certain possibility and could not believe it. However, when they saw their master jump over the wall and enter, these well-trained secret guards could not help but be stunned. Fortunately, the stiff expression did not last for too long. Thinking of the fact that their master kidnapped people during the day, it seemed that it was not surprising that he would do something like sneaking into a lady's room at night. What did the secret guards do? When their master planned, they took action first. When their master had an accident, they risked their lives to save him. When their master killed someone, they dealt with the aftermath. Now that their master wanted to sneak into a lady's room, they naturally had to keep watch. They looked at each other. Those who should be outside stayed outside, and those who should go in went in. They had a tacit understanding of the division of labor and did not need to communicate with each other. Although Li Hongyuan had never been to the Luo family, he was very familiar with the layout of the Luo family. He did not need to take a detour. He avoided the guards on night patrol and went directly to Begonia Elegant House. At this time, Begonia Elegant House was naturally sleeping in the dark like other places. Hearing the familiar signal, Mama Gong was immediately alerted. She nimbly got up, but did not make any sound. She listened carefully. The sound was very soft and did not disturb others. Mama Gong held a slightly bright lamp and walked into the courtyard. She saw the figure standing proudly. It was obviously a man, and it was very obvious that he was not one of the secret guards. Mama Gong immediately realized who it was. Mama Gong hated that she could not fiercely bite him. Mama Gong stepped forward. With the help of the dim light, she finally saw the other party's face. It was indeed the living king of hell who meant what he said. "Greetings to your highness. Your highness came in the middle of the night. It is really improper and has broken the rules. It also degrades your highness's prestige and loses your bearing and self-restraint. The secret guards who followed behind her almost broke out in cold sweat. They didn't know that the Lady Protector was capable in all aspects. These two were not ordinary. While they were sweating for her, they also faintly admired her in their hearts. This prince thought that Mama Gong should have known that these things are nothing to this prince. If this prince wants to see Wan Wan, you can't stop me. I don't think this prince needs to teach you what to do. Mama Gong suppressed the anger in her heart. There was a hungry wolf coveting her miss, but she had to be an accomplice. If she let the other secret guards do it, a group of rough men would cause her miss's servant girls to suffer. Therefore, she could only use a gentle method to let those servant girls have a good night's sleep. Your Highness, please wait a moment. Li Hongyuan stood in the courtyard. When he saw the dim light in Jingwan's room, he walked straight in. Because of the injury on her foot, Jingwan was determined not to let her keep watch at night. Moreover, Jingwan did not like to let others keep watch at night. Therefore, the two senior servant girls were the ones who were guarding outside tonight. However, Mama Gong had already moved them to another place. Mama Gong waited in the room without any intention of leaving. Li Hongyuan completely ignored her and casually threw an item to her. Mama Gong subconsciously caught it and opened the cloth wrapped around it. When she saw the item inside, she really did not know what expression she should have. He used a precious treasure like the night luminescent pearl to spy on a beauty at night. Li Hongyuan walked to Jingwan's bedside and lifted the muslin curtain. When he saw Jingwan's peaceful and beautiful sleeping face, his restless heart suddenly calmed down. In his previous life, he had not seen her sleeping face many times. However, every time he saw her sleeping face, her brows were tightly knitted, as if she was in a nightmare and could not escape. Li Hongyuan reached out and gently brushed his fingers across her brows. They were smooth and delicate. Following the corner of her eyes, his fingers sank into her hair. Her well-maintained black hair made it hard for him to part with it. Mama Gong put the night luminescent pearl into a hollow incense ball and hung it at the head of the bed. Immediately, the inside of the curtain could be seen clearly. Jingwan's originally excellent skin was now glowing like a pearl. Compared to his previous life, this was the first and only time he hugged her. Although his body was originally good, he had experienced all kinds of hardships and had become rough. However, it was this kind of her that made him intoxicated. It made him shameless and unscrupulous. In this life, he must protect her well. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652945. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken.com Mobile Edition. Chapter 65. Your Highness. Even though Mama Gong lowered her voice, there was still a hint of sternness in her voice. Li Hongyuan turned his head and glanced at her indifferently. That glance made Mama Gong's heart jump to her throat, blocking all the words she had yet to say. Nanny Gong frowned. The possessiveness in her eyes was dense to the point it couldn't be dispersed, and she seemed like a wild beast that occupied its territory. Whoever dared obstruct her or tried to seize her prey would immediately pounce out and tear that person into pieces. Either get out or shut up for this prince. Mama Gong's face was stiff. After a few breaths, she opened her mouth and said, "Your Highness really cares for Mississippi. No matter what you do, please think for Mississippi." Then she crouched down and left. No matter whether she was happy or angry, she never forgot the rules and etiquette. She had always been strict with herself, but tolerant of others. She was meticulous with Jingwan. Although Jingwan's servant girls revered her, they mostly treated her like family. Sometimes she was the best teaching. During the day, she had reminded Li Honyuan once. This was the second time, and it would also be the last time. Li Honyuan, the former master, had a bad temper and often did unimaginable things. Moreover, he always did whatever he wanted. If it was something else or someone else, it was impossible to expect him to restrain himself. However, this person was her young lady. Nanny Gong had a deep trust in him. Based on how much he cared for her, he really held her in the palm of his hand and placed her at the top of his heart. Sometimes, she even felt that if he had to choose between the river and the young lady, he would choose the young lady. That kind of love was not fake. After all, the young lady herself did not know. Naturally, it was impossible for her to show it to people like them. If he could do this, how could he do something bad to Miss at this critical moment? If he really couldn't control himself and took Miss's body, he would definitely think of a way to deal with the aftermath and not let Miss's reputation be tarnished. Now that Granny Gong had thought this through, she decided not to continue to stand there and cause trouble. Li Honyuan really didn't care whether Granny Gong went out or not. She slowly took off her shoes and socks, then her outer robe, and then her inner garment. The whole process was quite pleasing to the eyes. Finally, she took off her crown, and her hair that didn't belong to Jingwan fell down. It must be said that Nanny Gong had also used something on Jingwan. Otherwise, she couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't pounce on him in this situation. After all, he was a handsome man with an amazing body. In the middle of the night, a man and a woman alone in a place where one's imagination would run wild, doing something so seductive. Most importantly, his deep eyes were filled with only her. How many people could resist him? Jingwan felt that she would most likely become a layman at that moment. Unfortunately, Jingwan was in a deep sleep. Because she was drugged with something to calm her nerves, she didn't even dream. Naturally, she was unaware of the outside world. Li Honyuan placed his hand on the neckline of his underwear. After hesitating for a moment, he slowly tore off his underwear as well. His slender and powerful body and wheat-colored skin, even though he was a grown man, due to his pampered upbringing and proper maintenance, he looked just as delicate. Li Honyuan lifted the brocade quilt and was about to slide in, but his body couldn't help but stiffen. The situation under the quilt was very different from what he had imagined. It looked like she was sleeping properly, but what was underneath was not proper at all. Because Mama Gong practiced martial arts, her hearing was far better than ordinary people. When she heard the faint sounds outside, she suddenly thought of her Mrs. Bad habit that couldn't be corrected. She was originally a hungry wolf. If she continued like this, she really couldn't stay calm. Jingwan, who was originally unaware of the outside world, opened her eyes in a daze. Coincidentally, her eyes met with Li Hongyuan's. Perhaps Li Honyuan didn't expect Jingwan to wake up. He was stunned for a moment and didn't know how to react. However, Jingwan rubbed against his body because of her discomfort. This reaction made Li Honyuan instantly understand that Jingwan wasn't really awake. Otherwise, a girl in the boudoir wouldn't be like this when she suddenly encountered something like this. Li Honyuan sighed in relief and at the same time felt a little regretful. He was prepared to be discovered by Jingwan. However, some things weren't easy to explain. He still hoped that, after the two of them got married, they would have some time together. Then, even if some of the things he did were a little out of line, he could confidently say that he fell in love with her at first sight. However, Li Honyuan, wasn't a saint. He helped her do everything behind her back, but she didn't know anything about it. He was still a little unhappy. Jingwan's eyes were covered with a layer of mist. The corners of her eyes were dyed with an abnormal shade of red since she was awake. Li Honyuan just assumed that the two of them were in love with each other. That exceptionally pleasant voice kept calling out, "Wan Wan," by her ear. Li Honyuan had experienced the ups and downs of his previous life. He had tasted all kinds of joys and sorrows. He had stepped through wind, frost, rain, and snow. Countless people wouldn't be able to experience the ups and downs of life. Therefore, his rationality was absolutely beyond anyone's imagination. Even if he was sinking, he knew that now wasn't the time. Therefore, he didn't completely indulge himself. Mama Gong waited outside for 2 hours before she heard the living king of hell calling for her to come in. Even though she was mentally prepared, Mama Gong still quickly walked in after hearing the call. She lost her usual calmness. Li Honyuan was loosely draped in a robe. He wrapped Jingwan in a quilt and held her in his arms as he sat on a soft couch. His hair was loose and his eyes were half closed. There was a hint of laziness in his expression. The usual hostility and gloominess were all gone. His entire person had softened, and because of this, he appeared even more attractive. Even Mama Gong couldn't help but be startled when she saw him. In just a short moment, Mama Gong looked at Jingwan's peaceful sleeping face and quickly walked to the bedside. She lifted the gauze curtain and looked at the messy bed. Her heart was filled with panic. Fortunately, there were no traces of blood. Mama Gong deftly changed the things on the bed. She turned around to look at Li Honyuan. "Your Highness, this servant asked your people to go back and get some clothes for you. I'll also pour some water for you to wash up in the washroom." Li Honyuan opened his eyes and glanced at her. He got up with Jingwan in his arms and put her on the bed. Mama Gong mixed some warm water for him and put it in the washroom. Then she went back to wash Jingwan. In order not to disturb others, she naturally couldn't take a bath in a big way. Mama Gong lifted the quilt and saw that Jingwan didn't have any marks on her body. She didn't know whether she should admire his endurance or doubt his love for this girl. It was said that it was difficult to control oneself when one was deeply in love. Even if he was a man with an unmentionable disease, it wouldn't prevent him from leaving some marks. However, it was obvious that Nanny Gong's idea was premature. When she turned Jingwan over and wiped her back, Nanny Gong was so angry that she almost fainted when she saw the dense marks on her back. Her skin color was not normal at all. Some of the marks even had small red dots the size of a needle tip. If she didn't apply medicine, Jingwan would definitely notice it when she woke up tomorrow morning. This made Mama Gong almost unable to restrain herself and do something that offends her superiors. When Li Honyuan came out of the washroom, Mama Gong was concentrating on applying medicine for Jingwan. She was angry and naturally didn't give him a good face. However, although Li Honyuan only tasted a bit of meat, it was still far from being full. Right now he was in a good mood and didn't bother to argue. She tidied up Jingwan, including her hair. The most important thing was that she put on her underwear. Seeing that Li Honyuan wouldn't leave at this time, Mama Gong packed up her things and went out. Out of sight, out of mind. Li Honyuan supported his head with one hand, lying on his side and looking at Jingwan. His fingers twirled a strand of her hair around his finger and played with it. Ben Wang originally didn't intend to do anything. It was Yu Wanwan who seduced Ben Wang first. Therefore, you can't blame Ben Wang for not doing the same. If Jingwan heard his words, she would probably be irritable. Jin Qinwang, where's your face? https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652946. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. No registration required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Biku Ga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 66. Li Honyuan hugged Jingwan for a moment before getting up. Gong Momo knew that unless it was necessary, he did not like people to get close to him, so she did not step forward to help him change his clothes. However, he was able to hug the girl all night. From this point, it could be seen that he treated the girl differently. Li Honyuan quickly put on his clothes, freshened up, and sat back on the bed. He fixed his gaze on Jingwan and finally leaned over to kiss her lips, take care of her. Only then did he leave. The shadow guards who had been standing guard outside did not dare to have the slightest complaint. Moreover, when they found that their master did not have such a heavy air of hostility, they could not help but be secretly happy. Once again, they hoped that the future Wang Fei would be able to pass through the door earlier, taking advantage of the night, how he came, how he went back. Except for a few people, even the person involved, Jingwan, did not know that the dignified Jin Xinwang had visited the Luo Fu at night. This visit lasted for nearly 3 shurchen. Li Honyuan, on the other hand, felt refreshed. Jingwan, on the other hand, was not in a good state. After waking up, she seemed to be in a daze. She did not get up as usual. Instead, she sat on the bed as if she had nothing to live for. She had been dreaming all night, and it was a kind of dream that she did not have during the most restless period of her previous life. She somewhat irritably pulled at her hair. In the end, what was going on? It was said that what one thinks during the day, one dreams at night, but she absolutely did not have the slightest bit of such thoughts. Then, she belatedly realized that she was wearing clothes, and that the things on the bed had been changed. Especially when Gong Momo just happened to walk to the bedside. "Miss, do you want to get up?" Jingwan could not help but imagine. How big of a commotion did she make last night that even the people who were standing guard outside found out. She did not have the face to see people. "Okay, Mama." Jingwan moved her mouth, but the rest of the words could not come out. Gong Momo was not old, but she was shrewd. How could she not know Jingwan's thoughts? It seems that Miss had a nightmare last night. Newbie just happened to come in and saw that Miss was sweating, so Newbie wiped Miss and changed the mattress. Jingwan heard this and breathed a sigh of relief. However, she felt that Gong Momo said this to protect her face. She was also very glad that it was not the Yahuan who found out. As for why Gong Momo came in at night, it was not the least bit strange. She almost did not get up at night and would not ask for water, but Gong Momo treated her like a child, for fear that she would lift the quilt and catch a cold. She did not seem to feel at ease if she did not check. Gong Momo, Momo, Gong, Gong Momo. Later, Concubine Ji, Concubine Ping, and the 2 Shu sisters came one after another. Needless to say, the elder brother was not young, so he did not have to pay respects every day. "Where's Madame Bai?" Luo Rongyan did not see her, so he asked casually. In his opinion, even if she was pregnant, she still had to do what she should do. It was just paying respects, and it was not a long journey. How could she be tired? Jingwan glanced at her father. He still did not know about Madame Bai. Therefore, Jingwan respected her father more than enough, but was not close enough. From her own point of view, she naturally hoped that he would not put the concubines in his eyes. However, from the concubine's point of view, he was a complete scum. Moreover, he was not a competent father. She gently pinched Madame Zhang, who was about to speak. If she let her mother say it, she did not know what she would say. Moreover, there were 2 younger sisters present. How could she say those dirty things so casually? "Father, your face does not look good. How about I take my 2 younger sisters to pay respects to grandmother first? You can go later?" Luo Rongyan was not stupid. He knew that there was something going on. He nodded and said, "Okay, you go first." Jingwan led Luo Jingyu and Luo Jingwei away. Before leaving, she glanced at Concubine Ji. Concubine Ji nodded imperceptibly, indicating that she understood Jingwan's meaning. Rather than letting Madame Zhang say this, it was better to let Concubine Ji say it. As the saying goes, one must pay attention to the art of speaking. The same matter, different words could lead to different results. Concubine Ji was very clear about her position. Therefore, Jingwan believed that she would say this matter perfectly. If Madame Bai knew her place, Jingwan naturally would not do anything to her. However, as Luo said, she relied on the piece of meat in her belly to abuse her power. Now that something had happened, she could not blame Jingwan for adding insult to injury. In the eyes of Concubine Ji and the others, Jingwan was too soft-hearted. If it were up to them, it would be best to directly cause an accident and let her die suddenly. Just confining her was too easy on her. Compared to Falling Plum House, the main courtyard was more lively. As soon as Jingwan and her sisters arrived, the people from the 3rd branch also arrived. However, compared to before, there was an additional woman. Even if Jingwan did not have any impression of the concubines from a third branch, she immediately understood that this woman was the one that her third uncle had brought back last night. She really did look like a beauty that would make anyone feel pity for her. Logically speaking, ordinary concubines did not have the qualifications to greet old Madame, especially someone like old Madame Luo, who did not like concubines. Madame Lu was not a fool. Even if she pretended to be virtuous and magnanimous, she would not do such a stupid thing. Then, there was only one reason. Luo Romping had her bring a concubine who had been exposed to old Madame Luo. Naturally, she was much better than those concubines who had silently died in the back courtyard and no one would know. It was clear that this woman had a high position in Luo Romping's heart. Mother, this is the little sister that third master brought back last night. He treats her like his own flesh and blood. Didn't this daughter-in-law bring her here early in the morning for you to see? Madame Lu said with a smile. However, everyone could see that her smile was forced, and her words were filled with grievances. Jingwan sighed in her heart. Her acting skills were amazing. Jingwan would believe that she was burning with anger because Luo Romping had humiliated her, but she would not believe that she would compromise. Her purpose was nothing more than to gain sympathy in front of old Madame Luo. As long as old Madame Luo stood on her side and supported her, then no matter how much Luo Romping doted on this woman, she would not be able to cause any trouble. This little sister is not only beautiful, but her name is also good. She is called https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652947. HTML. Please click here to report an error. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Mobile Edition. Chapter 67. As a concubine, without the permission of the mistress, she dared to speak casually, let alone interrupt her. Mrs. Lu should have reprimanded her for being so unruly, but she didn't. Instead, she showed a look of fear. Nyang, after all, my younger sister just got married. She doesn't understand many rules. Please forgive her. If these words were said by Madame Zhang, other people would only think that she was hopeless. But since it was Madame Lu, the way everyone looked at her was a bit strange. Was it because she felt threatened, or Jingwan's attention was not on Mrs. Lu? In her opinion, no matter what Mrs. Lu's reaction was, it was normal. But this woman who called herself Huan Yang, looking at her posture, she was not a person who didn't understand etiquette. But she did such a rude thing. It could only be said that what Mrs. Lu wanted to say might be more unfavorable to her. As the saying goes, choose the lesser of two evils. However, Mrs. Lu only wanted to say her name. The harm caused by a name was nothing more than offending and taboo. Jingwan's first thought was that her name might offend her grandmother. As for the name Huan Yang, it was most likely changed for some reason after Mrs. Lu saw her last night. And Mrs. Lu didn't say Huan Yang's original name. Her purpose was to create trouble for Huan Yang. Since it had nothing to do with her, Jingwan looked away after a few glances. She glanced at Luo Jingying, who looked a little dispirited, and Luo Jingqiang, who was much more beautiful than usual. Luo Jingying was probably scolded harshly, while Luo Jingqiang was about to break free. She didn't want to continue living in Luo Jingying's shadow, and was gradually blooming her own brilliance. Jingwan didn't know that after she looked away, Huan Yang was quietly sizing her up. Among the younger generation, old Madame doted on her the most. That kind of bearing and self-restraint, as well as the indifference from inside out, could only be cultivated by being carefree and following one's heart. It was really enviable. However, if she wanted to establish a foothold in this backyard, it was true that she couldn't offend her. However, it was not a bad method to occasionally use her hand to restrain Lu Shi. After all, People with discerning eyes could see that old Madam didn't like Lu Shi. If she used her hand to plot against Lu Shi, no matter what the result was, Lu Shi would suffer. However, she must be careful when doing things. If people knew that she was the one behind it, her end would be much worse than Mrs. Lu's. Jingwan didn't know that in this short period of time, someone had ideas about her. But even if she knew, it didn't matter. She would deal with whatever came her way. Even if those powerful people were given some time to plan carefully, even if she couldn't trample them into the mud, she could make them fall. And it would be easier to deal with the ghosts in this house. You are the third branch. As the mistress, you should take care of yourself. You don't need me to forgive you. Nyang is right. Mrs. Lu felt wronged. She looked at Madame Luo's eyes as if she was bullied by a concubine. Not only did she not get her mother-in-law's help, but her mother-in-law also bullied her. Even Jingwan was a little shocked by her mother's pitiful appearance. As the Lu matriarch's daughter, Luo Jingying was shocked speechless by her mother's appearance, not to mention the others. This style changed too quickly and too strangely. If Mrs. Lu hadn't been in front of everyone's eyes, they would have thought that she was a different person. However, looking at Madame Luo's originally indifferent face, it gradually sank and had a tendency to become colder and colder. The others were affected and became more and more quiet. Only Mrs. Lu was still the same. Just when Jingwan suspected that Mrs. Lu had also been seen through, she found a contradiction. Mrs. Lu's mood did not change with her grandmother's mood. This was not the performance of a bully. Even if her grandmother didn't like her, she didn't pull down her face like now. So, Mrs. Lu had really angered her grandmother. Jingwan looked carefully and thought carefully again. She understood that Mrs. Lu had not been seen through. She was still the same person, scheming and scheming. This time, she was angered by Luo Rongping. She was ready to tear off her hypocritical mask and do something desperate. Madame Lu's appearance was actually a threat. If Madame Luo didn't stand on her side, then soon, the people outside would know that she was a punching bag. She was determined to drag the reputation of the Luo family down with her. Madame Luo sneered, "Mrs. Lu, I really misjudged you before." Although Madame Luo was usually kind, after all, she had accumulated power for decades. When her aura was released, Mrs. Lu would definitely not be able to withstand it. Her face could not help but turn pale. "Nyang, your daughter-in-law has no choice." In fact, what Madame Luo really cared about was not that Mrs. Lu was unscrupulous, but that she was selfish. For her own interests and face, she could completely abandon her children that she always talked about. If it was really for the good of the two children, why couldn't she endure it? After all, she was the mistress of the house. Even if Lady Huan had the upper hand, public opinion and etiquette would be on her side. As long as she endured it until her daughter got married and her son became an adult, she could let go of all the torment and revenge. But she just couldn't bear the slightest grievance. She didn't want to wait, and she didn't want to endure it. It was pure nonsense to say that she had always been compromising in the Luo family. It was fine if she was domineering in the third branch, but Madame Luo didn't suppress her, let alone torture her, and her sisters-in-law didn't make things difficult for her. It was she who wanted to pretend to be virtuous and magnanimous. Who could she blame? With Madame Luo's temper, even if her daughter-in-law had no children, she would not put people around her son. If you were really jealous and made a big scene, she might even help you stop those concubines from entering the house. If you were willing to pretend, who would take the initiative to speak up? It's not like you have nothing better to do. Speaking of which, she could keep pretending because her bottom line was not stepped on. But when her bottom line was stepped on, she was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. All the hair on her body stood up and she jumped up high. Lady Lu didn't care about her children, but Madame Luo could not care about the reputation of the Luo family. If it was really spread that she mistreated her son's daughter-in-law, being gossiped about was not a small matter. She was afraid that she would be caught and accused of not being strict with the family. If Luo Shangshu's political enemies also accused him of "how can you sweep the world if you don't sweep the house?" His official position might be taken away. Madame Luo's eyes fell on Lady Huan. Go back and copy the female commandments 300 times, and then learn to be a concubine. I'm not feeling well, so I don't have to come to pay my respects in the future. It's so noisy that I have a headache. Lady Huan didn't complain or get angry. She was obedient. Many people sighed in their hearts. Sure enough, this person was not easy to deal with. She could force Lady Lu to use extreme methods to find Madame Luo to be her backer. Was this something that an ordinary person could do? Lady Lu was satisfied. Her disgusting image disappeared. This daughter-in-law will go back and talk to her. In the future, she will not disturb you. Madame Luo was the villain. Even if Luo Rongping knew about it, at most, he would say a few words to Lady Lu. The punishment of his beloved would still be carried out, unless he dared to disobey Madame Luo. Madame Luo was not happy, so naturally, Jingwan was not happy. Originally, she wanted to watch the third branch's drama and add more firewood when needed, but now she changed her mind. Luo Jingying often targeted her, but she didn't care. But if he stretched his claws to the head of the person she cared about, then don't blame her for cutting off his claws. Dismissed. Those who didn't come don't need to come. After Madame Luo finished speaking, she directly got up and went to the back. Jingwan let her two younger sisters go back by themselves. She went to see Madame Luo. Jingwan was worried that something bad would happen to her because of anger. Madame Luo's sullen mood lasted for a while, so she talked to Jingwan about her marriage. Later, I will have someone send a message to your eldest grandaunt and let her send a message to your third granduncle. I believe that it will be settled in a month or two at most. At that time, the spring examination will be over, and Min Gear can have a double happiness. Grandmother, are you asking me to add happiness to Cousin Min? Jingwan said with a smile. Of course, a married daughter is like spilled water. Madame Luo pretended to be serious and said, Grandmother, granddaughter is sad. Jingwan cooperated and showed a pitiful look. The grandmother and granddaughter laughed together. The servants around Madame Luo all breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, before Madame Luo's message could be sent to the Qin family, news came from the other side, saying that their third brother, Chen Zhengmin's grandfather, had brought his family to the capital again. When the letter was sent from their side, they also set off. Calculating the time, at most 10 days to half a month, the family would arrive in the capital. Madame Luo was very happy. Not only could she see her brother, whom she hadn't seen for many years, but she could also settle Wan's marriage as soon as possible. It was no wonder that Madame Luo was so anxious, because when it came to Jingwan's marriage, she always felt unsure. If it was not confirmed, her heart would always be in suspense. Although this feeling was strange, Madame Luo had to treat it seriously. Digression. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652948. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is free. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com. Bicken. Com mobile version, reading website, mbicken.com. Chapter 68. Even if more than one life had been lost in the inner residence, in the eyes of those big men, it was just a small matter. If it touched on something that he cared about, he might intervene, and his methods were usually simple and crude. If he was under certain restrictions, he might even tell the truth. If he was the absolute authority in the family, then he would help whoever he favored without any principles. Even if the others were to stomp their feet in anger, they could only swallow their anger. In their eyes, the only important thing was the imperial court. Except for those who really cared about the people in the world, the rest didn't even care about their own jobs. They worked hard to curry favor with this and that, seeking for benefits for themselves and their families. They tried to climb higher and obtain supreme power. They didn't have the ability to expand the territory and seek for the title of Marquis, so they hoped to rise to a higher level by succeeding the emperor. The important thing in the imperial court today was the fire in the flower market yesterday. Because the fire was not put out in time, the whole flower market was almost destroyed and there were heavy casualties. If it was an accident, the most unlucky was probably the hidden fire army and the city defense team. But it was obvious that this was an arson case. Because there were too many corpses in the fire and it was a serious matter. After the fire was put out, the matter of apprehending the murderer was handed over to the governor, Leftfingy, and Right Fufung of the capital government. In less than 24 hours, even though the three of them led all the officials of the capital government day and night, they still didn't have a clue at the imperial court meeting. They didn't even know the identity of the dead. The governor's eyes were bloodshot. He knelt in the main hall and was scolded by Emperor Lu Qingdi. The governor was also helpless. The corpses were so badly burned that even the coroner couldn't see much. He didn't know whether they were burned to death or thrown into the fire after death. There were no other clues at the scene. It seemed that someone had erased the corpses. Everything pointed to the fact that someone had done it, but there was no evidence. The more it was like this, the more complicated the matter became. However, in fact, many people in the main hall actually knew the truth of the matter, but because there was no evidence, they all kept their mouths shut. Perhaps in their hearts, they had already cursed the other party's ancestors hundreds of times. That's right, the third prince, Prince Rue, believed it was the first prince, Prince Kong, and Prince Kong believed it was Prince Rue. And as a pawn, the pitiful worm, the fourth prince, Prince Gong, also believed it was one of these two, or maybe they were temporarily working together to trick him. In his heart, he couldn't wait to skin these two people alive. The forces in his hands were relatively weak. This time the loss, for him, was not small. In addition to these three people, the second prince died early. The fifth prince was sick and almost didn't go out. The sixth prince, Li Hongyuan, was a master who didn't care about anything. Out of 10 morning court sessions, it was already good if he could attend 1 or 2 times. Now he wasn't here. The other princes, who had reached the age of 16, stood in their respective positions. Whether they were secretly relying on a powerful brother or had their own ambitions, whether they knew the inside story of this matter or not, they didn't intend to get involved. After all, if they were careless, they could get into trouble. Being pushed out as a scapegoat was light, but losing their little lives was not worth it. The people of each faction naturally weren't idle. Even if they had nothing to do with this matter, they would fabricate it. Otherwise, even if it was a trivial matter, they would use it to attack each other, digging holes for each other. If they weren't loyal to the same master on the surface, and in the dark, they would do their best to make enemies. After all, the ones who suffered were only the masters on the surface. Because there were few wars, the military officials were weaker than the civil officials. However, they were a group of rough, old men. Among them, Qin Tianming was the first to stand out. If there was a disagreement, he would directly use his fists. Even if he was once beaten by Lu Qingdi, he didn't repent. Lu Qingdi was annoyed by the quarrel. He didn't handle the business properly, and the more he talked, the more he deviated. Enough. The court, which was originally like a market, quieted down in an instant. The Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, together with the capital magistrate, investigate this matter together. The time limit is 3 days. If you can't give me a satisfactory result, all related personnel will be fined 3 years of salary. If there is anyone who slacks off or doesn't do his best, he will be demoted by 1 rank and go back to reflect on his mistakes for 3 months. The court session is dismissed. Lu Qingdi said with a cold face and directly left. Farewell, Your Majesty. Those who didn't care about the matter cupped their hands to their colleagues and leisurely left Fengtian Hall. The Ministry of Justice, the Supreme Court, and the capital magistrate had a headache. What was this all about? The most innocent was Diwu Taiqing. As the Chancellor of the Supreme Court, he happened to be at the scene yesterday. Coincidentally, he was also neutral. No matter who the master behind the Minister of Justice and the capital magistrate were, He felt no pressure to find him. In a word, Lord Diwu, even if you didn't say anything at the scene, your investigation ability is also first class. Capable people do more work. If you need anything, just say the word. Not to mention the capital magistrate, who was a fourth-rank official, was originally lower than the Chancellor of the Supreme Court. There was nothing wrong with his flattery. However, as the Minister of Justice, you have the nerve to say such things. Diwu Taiching looked at him coldly. Unfortunately, the other party was extremely thick-skinned and didn't feel ashamed at all. His whole face was written with "Thank you for your trouble." Diwu Taiching snorted coldly. It was true that he was a hard nut to crack, but he wasn't the kind of person who liked to take on everything. He knew that if this matter wasn't handled well, it wouldn't be as simple as losing his salary or being demoted. If the princes were really fighting behind his back, he might lose his life. Who would be so stupid as to take on this matter alone? Let's do our own things today. We'll gather tomorrow. It's best if it's handled well, but if it's not, we'll continue to investigate. If it's fine, everyone's fine. If there's a problem, we'll shoulder it together. Bypassing the two, he quickly caught up with Luo Peishan. Although Luo Peishan was only in the Ministry of Rights, Diwu Taiching never underestimated his ability. He was also at the scene yesterday. If he asked him, he might be able to get more pertinent advice. When the two came to a place, Luo Peishan knew what Diwu Taiching wanted to do. He waved his hand and stopped Diwu Taiching from saying anything. He only said to Diwu Taiching meaningfully, "His Majesty wants a satisfactory result." Diwu Taiching was startled. A satisfactory result might not necessarily be the truth of the matter. Diwu Taiching's face sank. Most likely, he couldn't give His Majesty what he wanted. So, he only needed to follow his own way of doing things and investigate the matter. It didn't matter whether he could get the result or not. In any case, for him, it was just going through the motions. His Majesty wouldn't pay attention to him. On the contrary, he was afraid that he would do something he didn't want to see. Royal brothers, fighting, disregarding human life. That was a big scandal. So, at most, he would have the opportunity to lose his salary for 3 years. Thinking clearly, Diwu Taiching didn't worry anymore and went back to do what he needed to do. The Gong Prince stopped his two elder brothers and said with a fake smile, "Two imperial brothers, this younger brother admires you more and more." Prince Kong and Prince Rui naturally knew what he was talking about. After all, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. The Gong Prince was the unlucky cicada from the beginning. Obviously, he didn't know who was behind him. In a flash, Prince Kong and Prince Rui both thought of putting the blame on each other. Teaming up with their fourth brother, taking down the enemy, then taking down their fourth brother would be much easier. They really recognized each other as their opponents, while their fourth brother was just playing a role of balance and easing the tension between them. Prince Kang's idea was particularly prominent. After all, Prince Rui was afraid of the Gong Prince's backer, Left Governor Qin Tianming, but Prince Kong knew that the Left Governor was loyal to him. This fourth brother was just a clown, not worth mentioning. Regarding this, Prince Kong was extremely proud. Who would have thought that he himself was also a clown being played around? Fourth brother. Prince Kong and Prince Rui opened their mouths almost at the same time. Then they looked at each other at the same time. It must be said that they were old rivals since childhood. Sometimes, even if they didn't completely understand each other's thoughts, they still had a 70 to 80% understanding. They didn't need to say much to know each other's intentions. Very good. Now that they couldn't say anything, they could only solve it in private. Let's see who has the ability to pull their fourth brother to their side. One smiled wanton and brash, the other smiled reserved and refined. The Gong Prince was so angry that his liver hurt. These two people completely ignored him, completely didn't put him in their eyes. They had a tacit understanding that made him hate that he couldn't directly tear them apart. Belittling him? Looking down on him? Based on what? Which part of him was worse than them? Just wait and see. One day, he would ruthlessly trample them under his feet and watch them wag their tails and beg for mercy. Listen to fourth brother's words. Fourth brother's ability has always been highly praised by imperial father. Speaking of admiration, it's third brother who admires you. Your third sister-in-law has been complaining recently that she didn't have time to get close to fourth sister-in-law. Third brother heard that the two of them were as close as one person before they got married. Tonight, third brother will have your third sister-in-law prepare some wine. You can take fourth sister-in-law to third brother's house to sit. Third brother still has things to do here, so I'll take my leave first. Prince Rue patted the Gong Prince's shoulder, nodded to Prince Kong, turned and left, as if he wasn't worried that Prince Kong would take this opportunity to pull the Gong Prince to his side. The Gong Prince's biggest reliance was the Yu family, so he naturally paid special attention to his princess. The Gongqin princess could be said to be the happiest among the many princesses and Junwang consorts. Her husband doted on her, and even if there were concubines and concubines in the Gong Palace, they were the least compared to the other princesses, and they didn't pose a threat to her at all. She also had her father's protection. Imperial concubine Qin Shu was her aunt, and her proper mother-in-law treated her like her own daughter. She really didn't have the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. Even if there were sisters-in-law who laughed at her, her life was nothing more than a mirage. She just thought they were jealous of her. The Gong Prince's face was somewhat ugly. He could refuse other invitations, but not this one. Without waiting for Prince Kong to speak, eldest brother, younger brother will also take his leave first. The other princes walked around Prince Kong, afraid of being implicated and becoming the target of his anger. Considering his current position, Prince Kong held back his anger. If it was any other time, he could have invited Old Four in the same way, and if the other side didn't agree, he could have said agree to Old Third, not eldest brother. Are you looking down on me, your eldest brother? Unfortunately, he just lost his princess, and now was not the time for a banquet. So he could only find another opportunity, and he had to be quick. If he delayed until the evening, it would be troublesome. Li Hongming, that person, even if he couldn't make Old Four join forces with him, he would still arouse Old Four's hatred towards him. After all, the left governor was Old Four's father-in-law. Even if he didn't care about him, the left governor would have scruples about his daughter. If Old Four really made things difficult for him, it would cause a lot of trouble. Thinking about it, Prince Kong still prepared to go find his imperial mother. Li Hongming could start with the Gongqin princess, so if his imperial mother wanted to summon her, it would be equally justified. Not long after the Gong Prince left, he ran into his father-in-law Qin Tianming. Greetings to Prince. Quickly dispense with the formalities. We're all family. Father-in-law doesn't need to be so polite. Etiquette can't be abolished. Besides, we haven't left the palace yet. Naturally, we can't give Prince something to talk about. Regarding Qin Tianming's attitude, the Gong Prince was very pleased. Even if he relied on him, he was still a prince, a prince. As a subject, he naturally had to be respectful. This way, when he ascended the throne in the future, even if he didn't let him take power, at least he would let the Qin family enjoy wealth and glory. And his princess consort, even if she didn't hold the Phoenix seal, he would let her sit on the emperor's seat. It must be said that the Gong Prince was still too inexperienced in Qin Tianming's eyes. What kind of mentality he had. Qin Tianming was actually very clear, and he wasn't of the same mind as the champion constabulary. In addition to family reasons, the fourth prince wasn't worthy of his assistance. With Qin Tianming as a pearl, who would look at other fish eyes. Of course, those with great ambition who wanted to hold power hoped that the master was weak and the subject was strong. At the very least, they couldn't let the person on the throne have the final say. Naturally, the one they didn't want the most was Qin Tianming, a powerful, unyielding ruler. Qin Tianming was very clear, unless it was really necessary. This son-in-law of his wouldn't discuss anything with him. He secretly raised his own advisors, and right now he was probably busy going back to find them. He said something that seemed very boring, but actually had a deep meaning. As long as this son-in-law of his wasn't stupid, he should understand what he meant. The Gong Prince looked at his father-in-law's back as he left, slightly narrowing his eyes. Both sides were perfunctory. Both sides wanted benefits. It really was a very good idea. Prince, Something happened in the imperial garden. A dressed eunuch hurriedly rushed to the Gone Prince's side, obviously. He was one of the Gone Prince's people in the palace. What could happen in the imperial garden? The Gone Prince said, disapprovingly. The eunuch approached him and whispered a few words in his ear. The Gone Prince's face became somewhat subtle. Is this true? How could this servant dare deceive Prince? The matter is very big. The other princes, imperial concubines, and the various princesses have all gone over. The Gone Prince smiled meaningfully, should I say, as expected of Old Six. There really isn't anything he doesn't dare to do. Although he said that, the meaning behind his words was very sarcastic. Let's go. We'll also go take a look. I want to see if Father Emperor will still cover for him this time. They had a lot of complaints about Father Emperor's indulgence of Old Six. Prince, wouldn't that be bad? After all, this matter is related to His Majesty's face. The Gone Prince's attendant said. What are you afraid of? So many people have gone. The so-called law can't punish the majority. Can Father Emperor punish us all? When the Gone Prince arrived, the imperial garden was really crowded. But other than the center of the incident, the rest of the people were very quiet. But although it was quiet, they all had different expressions. Some were disdainful, some were gloating, some were watching with cold eyes. Of course, there were a few people who looked particularly worried, as if they were disappointed in him. But they couldn't ignore him. Li Hongyuan faced the furious Lu Qingdi, even more indifferent than when he angered Lu Qingdi in the past, his head slightly bowed, his hand playing with a piece of warm jade. His old man's roar was even louder than the wind blowing past his ears, because he was already distracted, thinking about what happened last night. There was a group of people kneeling next to him, and the woman in the lead was wearing a palace dress, beautiful and moving, but at this time she was crying pitifully. Evil creature, are you listening to Jin? Lu Qingdi was angry and kicked him. Who was Li Hongyuan? Even if he was distracted, it was just a subconscious reaction, and he easily dodged. You still dare to dodge? Li Hongyuan took 2 steps forward and continued to kick, but the result was the same. After repeating this several times, Lu Qingdi was tired and panting, but he couldn't even touch the corner of Li Hongyuan's clothes. Sixth brother, how can you be like this? Stop quickly. Perhaps he finally couldn't stand it anymore. Prince Kong shouted, and hurriedly stepped forward, trying to stop Li Hongyuan. With him taking the lead, many people rushed forward. But whether they wanted to stop them and persuade Lu Qingdi, or take advantage of this opportunity to retaliate against Li Hongyuan, only they themselves knew. Li Hongyuan sneered. No matter how many people came forward, and no matter what they wanted to do, he didn't fight back. He just narrowly avoided them, intentionally or unintentionally leading them, including Lu Qingdi, who was inadvertently hit. For a time, the scene was abnormally chaotic, but all of them were of noble status. The guards didn't dare to step forward. If any of them were hurt, they would lose their heads. The most unlucky ones were the group of people kneeling next to them. Because most of them were women, they screamed and hurriedly dodged, messing up their hair, messing up their clothes, and looking very embarrassed. In the end, it was the Empress who came out to calm the scene. What are you waiting for? Pull your masters away. Are you all dead? Their personal attendants braved the danger of being beaten, hurriedly hugged their masters, and used all their strength to pull them away. The Empress took this opportunity to walk to Lu Qingdi and whispered, Your Majesty, calm down first. Even if Old Sixth did something wrong, you are his father. You can just teach him a lesson. Why do you have to do it yourself? It will be a joke. Imperial concubine Su trembled with anger. What did she mean by just teach him a lesson? It was natural for the father to teach his son a lesson, not to mention the father was the emperor. But the Empress clearly meant to let the guards do it. The emperor was angry and ordered the guards to do it. Naturally, they didn't dare to be merciful, and the consequences were unimaginable. She stepped forward and knelt straight in front of Lu Qingdi. Your Majesty, Yuaner's daily behavior may occasionally be a little out of line, but he won't do such a disgraceful thing. There may be some misunderstanding, Your Majesty. Then she turned back and stared at Li Hongyuan. Why don't you kneel down and explain to your father? Li Hongyuan saw the obvious worry in her eyes, changed his previous indifference, frowned, and walked forward. Mother, get up first. Yuan, get up first. Li Hongyuan insisted. Imperial concubine Su was helpless. She glanced at Lu Chengdi and saw that he didn't say anything, so she had to get up. Li Hongyuan knelt down unhurriedly. Father, if you're still angry, you can kick me now. Even if you kick me to death, I won't move. This wasn't an admission of fault, nor an explanation. It was clearly adding fuel to the fire. Lu Chengdi subconsciously raised his foot, but he thought of something and restrained himself. But his face was uglier than before, and his back teeth were grinding. You evil creature, you still don't want to admit your fault, do you? Father, didn't I just take liberties with a woman? Do you need to be so angry? I thought you were used to it. Didn't you just take liberties with a woman? She's my woman, your concubine mother. Lu Chengdi roared. It was unknown whether Lu Chengdi was really mad or he was too lazy to cover up what Li Hongyuan had done. Anyway, those who should know already knew. He had no intention of evacuating the crowd. Instead, he pointed out the core of the matter with one sentence. Since he didn't care, Li Hongyuan didn't care either. She really has the self-awareness of a concubine mother. When she saw me, she should have avoided me automatically instead of coming up to me and saluting me shyly. She obviously wants to cheat on me. If I don't help her, won't I fail to live up to the beauty's grace? Besides, this son only moved his lips and didn't even touch a single finger of hers. In just a few words, she turned around and acted as if this son would do anything to her in public. Lu Chengdi's face turned black. Was it his son who took the initiative to take liberties with his concubine? Or was it his concubine who seduced his son first? These were two completely different natures. The latter was more infuriating than the former. Even if he had been taking good care of himself, he was an old man after all. Whether it was his appearance or his physical strength, he was old. His son was young and strong, and he had a good appearance that few women could refuse. Even if he was the emperor and could have anything he wanted, sometimes he couldn't help but be jealous. His woman was eyeing his son because he couldn't take it anymore. Extraordinary shame and humiliation. Lu Chengdi was like a ferocious beast on the verge of death. He turned his head and stared at the disheveled concubine. It was as if she had just been caught in the act of adultery. Lu Chengdi's eyes revealed an ominous glint, as if he would pounce on her and bite her to death in the next moment. That woman trembled in fear. Emperor, it's not like this. It's not like this. You must believe this concubine. It's Jin Xinwang. The beauties in Fu Wang's palace are like clouds. The beauties in Urchin's other courtyard are also not few. Taking away their status, in terms of appearance, urchins seem to be better. To Ken, they are just playthings. Who would care about their status? Li Hongyuan indifferently said, and then faintly glanced at that palace concubine. Just this appearance, just this figure, just this vulgar self-restraint. It's not enough for a Ken to take the initiative to take a fancy to her. A Ken is very suspicious, whether or not someone is deliberately framing a Ken. Asking Fu Wang to investigate clearly and make a decision for a Ken. Just look at what he was saying. He still didn't take a fancy to her. Then, as her father, he had pampered this woman for several months and promoted her again and again. Wasn't he blind and tasteless? Lu Chengdi's chest rapidly moved up and down, but it was probably because he was angered by Li Hongyuan every few days. Although he was angry, he appeared to be in high spirits and didn't show any problems. Concubine Li will be demoted to the last rank, banished to the cold palace, never to return. Take her away. Emperor, don't emperor. It's not like this, you can't do this, to woo. Concubine Li, who was struggling to pounce forward, was caught by the chamberlains. Then her mouth was gagged, so as not to startle His Majesty and be dragged away. And those palace servants who were originally serving her, like quails, shrunk into a ball, afraid that His Majesty would take his anger out on them. They didn't have such a good life to enter the cold palace. The biggest possibility was that they would be directly beaten to death. They wished they could find a hole to burrow into. No one was surprised by Concubine Li's ending. Even if the responsibility wasn't on her, with things like this, she couldn't continue to be pampered endlessly. And in these few months, Concubine Li relied on His Majesty's favor to make the other palace concubines look bad. Even when facing the Empress, noble consort Su, and the other most powerful women in the imperial harem, she dared to be perfunctory. The Empress and the others knew that she wouldn't have a good ending, so they didn't pay attention to her. The others were so angry that they stomped their feet. Now that they were suddenly trampled into the mud, they clapped their hands and cheered, but at the same time, they felt inexplicably sad. They all knew what kind of person Li Qingdi was. It was said that emperors were heartless, and he was very good at this. Only a few people knew that he once had feelings, but with that woman's death, his feelings were buried. Everyone was more concerned about how Li Qingdi would deal with Li Honyuan. He was too hateful. Even if they didn't have any conflicts with him, they hated his arrogance and domineering attitude. Naturally, they didn't want him to be well. Your Majesty, even if Concubine Li was in the wrong first, Jin Qinhuang just went with the flow and took liberties with Concubine Li. This is disgraceful and heresy. Normally, there is no reason for a son to take liberties with his father's concubine. That is a breach of virtue, a breach of contract, and should be severely punished by law. One of the palace concubines walked past the Empress and the 4 concubines to take the initiative to speak. What she said was reasonable, but the hatred in her eyes when she looked at Li Honyuan was too obvious. Su Guifei tilted her head and glanced at her. She knew why this woman hated Yuan. When Yuan was 7 or 8 years old, he knocked away the male fetus in her belly, causing her body to be damaged and unable to conceive again. She was able to live peacefully until now, other than the emperor compensating her by promoting her to a concubine position. She herself wasn't a threat. She didn't expect that the person who had been silent all this time would bear a grudge until now and still want to take the opportunity to take revenge. Li Honyuan also raised his head and glanced at that palace concubine, but he didn't have any impression. He had offended and dealt with so many people. Where would he have the mind to remember each and every one of them in his heart? Retracting his gaze, he said, seemingly intentionally or unintentionally, "For a beauty, it's better to be older." The palace concubine who spoke paled and tightened her handkerchief. No matter how much hatred she had in her heart, she didn't dare to speak again. Li Honyuan wasn't a stingy person. With concubine Li in front of him, what he said now was a full threat. He was a person who wasn't afraid of anything and could do anything, but others couldn't, especially these concubines. If their reputations were tarnished, they would be left in the cold at best, or die suddenly. Moreover, he wasn't a fool. He didn't need to do it himself. It would be too easy for him to find a guard or even a chamberlain to destroy them. Based on the emperor's infinite indulgence towards him, no matter how severe the punishment was, it wouldn't take his life. As for the people involved, those that could be killed would be killed. Those that couldn't be killed would be strictly ordered by the emperor to keep their mouths shut. Like this, who would dare to fight to the death with this living king of hell? It was said that there were only wrong names, but there were no wrong nicknames. Living king of hell. He really was a living king of hell. Yuan, you're still talking nonsense. Shut up. Imperial concubine Su sternly shouted, but her eyes were filled with worry. Li Honyuan, who had been unconcerned from beginning to end, softened his gaze because of her words. The sharpness around him also lessened a lot. At least he didn't feel as arrogant and unrepentant as before. He also obediently shut his mouth and didn't speak again. Imperial concubine Su seemed to let out a sigh of relief. Your Majesty, Yuan grew up by this concubine's side. Like Ming and Min Xiang, he is this concubine's flesh and blood. Regardless of whether they are good or bad, this is a fact that cannot be changed. If they are outstanding, this concubine will naturally be happy. But if they do something wrong, this concubine will also bear half of the responsibility. This concubine will naturally bear half of their punishment. Please be lenient. Li Qingdi's expression softened. What can I say about you? It's because you blindly indulged him that he became more and more lawless. When he was young, you could be harsh on him. But after he grew up, I haven't seen you say a single harsh word to him. That's different. When I was young, I was more strict and could correct the bad things in their bodies. Now this concubine can't just watch them suffer. Isn't that cutting this concubine's heart? It's probably because this concubine doesn't know how to teach children. None of the three of them are easy to worry about. Imperial concubine, Su said helplessly. My dear concubine, you're wrong. We've seen how you've raised your child. You can't be blamed for his current state. He's naturally irritable and bad-tempered. It's not like we don't know that you've spent more effort on him than third brother and Min Xiang. As for Min Xiang, she occasionally has a small temper. This concubine also likes her. Ordinary families pay attention to pampering their daughters, not to mention our imperial family's princess. Not to mention Ming. This concubine is very satisfied with him. Ming was mediocre before this mission. Now that your majesty is satisfied, it's because your majesty has taught him well. Hearing this, Lu Chengdi was overjoyed. He laughed loudly and didn't look angry at all. Their harmonious appearance made many people secretly grit their teeth, especially when Lu Chengdi said this concubine is very satisfied with him. Was it just a casual remark, or did it have other intentions? Your Majesty, then Yuan with Li Hongyuan's threat, even the Empress was quite afraid. She wasn't afraid that he would do something to her. No matter how presumptuous Li Hongyuan was, he wouldn't be so stupid. She was afraid that he would use other methods to vent his anger on her son and ruin the marriage between her son and her niece. The Empress didn't dare to underestimate his destructive power. Therefore, she didn't dare to say anything at this time. In your opinion, my beloved concubine, how should we deal with this bastard? Your Majesty, after a few days, why not let Yuan stay at White Dragon Temple for a few days, abstain from eating mushroom vegetarian food, and let the monks watch over him? It can be considered a small punishment. What does your Majesty think? Lu Chengdi's face changed slightly and returned to normal in a flash, as my beloved concubine says. A group of people who were waiting for Li Hongyuan to be unlucky all had black faces. This kind of big mistake was over just like that? Abstaining from eating mushroom vegetarian food for a period of time could also be considered a punishment? What was the difference between this and reflecting on one's mistakes behind closed doors? However, since Lu Chengdi agreed, there was no room for others to interfere. Even if this matter was known to everyone, it couldn't be brought to court. Daring to mention something that made Lu Chengdi lose face, you think you're as bold as Jin Qinhuang? Think you're as forgiving as Jin Qinhuang? Dream on. Li Hongyuan was greedy for beauty and enjoyment. Coming to a Buddhist place, there were all kinds of rules and precepts. This could be considered a severe punishment for him. Those who were unbalanced could only comfort themselves like this. Bastard, immediately roll to White Dragon Temple. Don't return without an imperial decree. Aken obeys the decree. Not waiting for Lu Chengdi to call him up, he slowly stood up. That appearance made Lu Chengdi want to slap him again, but no matter what, he was indifferent. To put it bluntly, he was a dead pig that wasn't afraid of boiling water. In the end, the one who was angry was only himself. What are you still standing here for? Do you all have nothing to do? Get lost for Jean. Such obvious anger. All the people who were watching the play immediately acted, as if they had something important to do. One by one, they asked to leave and even voluntarily sealed their mouths. You bastard, you still haven't gotten lost. The one that Jin doesn't want to see the most right now is you. Aken has something to say to Mufei. Fu Huang still has political affairs that haven't been finished, right? The implication was, still not leaving. In the end, Lu Chengdi couldn't take it anymore. He ruthlessly gave Li Hongyuan a kick before leaving in a huff. Li Hongyuan looked at the footprint on the corner of his clothes and frowned. It wasn't because of pain, but purely because he found it dirty. Noble consort Su naturally squatted down and used her handkerchief to wipe away the footprint. It was like she had fallen down when she was young and was helped up. Then, She would personally wipe away the dust on her clothes and comfort her with gentle words. Li Hongyuan's expression was slightly strange. He took a step back. Mu Fei, noble consort Su stood up straight and looked at him kindly. What's wrong? This kind of thing is done by the palace servants. How could I trouble you to do it personally? Mu Fei is used to it. If you don't like it, Mu Fei will pay more attention in the future. It's not that I don't like it. I can, just. Li Hongyuan paused, as if he didn't know how to continue. You just love Mu Fei. Mu Fei knows. Don't make your Fu Huang angry. Naturally, he won't do anything to you. Then, these things wouldn't have happened. What happened today? Mu Fei believes that you won't be so willful and rash. Even if concubine Li's behavior was improper first, you wouldn't go near her for no reason. There were so many people just now, but you didn't want to say it. Now can you tell Mu Fei? Noble consort Su said warmly. Li Hongyuan's face was cold, and he didn't want to speak. Noble consort, master saw concubine Li being disrespectful to you a few days ago, so shut up. Li Hongyuan coldly interrupted eunuch Mu. Noble consort Su was stunned. Tears quickly welled up in her eyes, and she felt very touched. You're really, Mu Fei. Li Hongyuan frowned, and his face became colder. However, anyone could see that he didn't know how to comfort noble consort Su. Because he was at a loss, he appeared even colder. Noble consort Su wiped away the tears that didn't fall and smiled happily. Others say that my son is bad. How could they know that my son is the most filial and considerate? But don't do such things that will damage your reputation in the future. Mu Fei has been in this harem for more than 20 years. Concubine Li is just a little girl who is spoiled and arrogant. Mu Fei has seen too much of it. Mu Fei doesn't take her seriously. Mu Fei knows what your Fu Huang is thinking. He's just greedy for a moment of novelty. It won't last long. Mu Fei, don't listen to Mu An's nonsense. I'm just doing it on a whim. Noble consort Su saw that he didn't admit it, so she didn't say anything else. But her expression clearly said, Mu Fei knows that Yuan is shy. Yuan when you go to White Dragon Temple this time, you can stay there peacefully for a while. Although it's a vegetarian fast, the vegetarian dishes in White Dragon Temple are famous for being delicious. Before Mu Fei entered the palace, she often went out to eat vegetarian dishes. In addition, copy Buddhist scriptures when you have nothing to do. Just treat it as praying for your Fu Huang. Don't cause any trouble. That's a sacred place of Buddhism. If you touch something that you shouldn't touch, I'm afraid your Fu Huang will really be angry. Listen to Mu Fei this time and be patient for a while, okay? Li Hongyuan paused. Mu Fei, don't worry. Mu Fei, I understand. That's good. Noble consort Su knew that as long as it was something he promised her, there was nothing he couldn't do. In that case, I'll take my leave first. I don't know how long it will take for me to come back. Mu Fei, take care. Don't worry. Your Fu Huang won't let you stay in White Dragon Temple for too long, noble consort Su said meaningfully. He thought that she would find an opportunity to plead with Li Qingdi. Li Hongyuan nodded indifferently. He didn't care about it at all. I'll take my leave. Once Li Hongyuan was far away, the mama by noble consort Su's side said, This mother and son are truly mother and son. No one can compare to them. No matter how Prince behaves outside, in front of noble consort Su, he is still the same as when he was young. Yes, Yuan is actually very smart. He gave up a lot because of me and Ming. Noble consort Su whispered. Li Hongming, Prince Rui, stood behind a tree not far away, watching and listening silently. Then he left expressionlessly. Only he knew what he was thinking. As they walked further and further away, the cold aura around Li Hongyuan became stronger and stronger. Eunuch Mu followed behind him, not daring to breathe loudly. Last night, he said that he would go to White Dragon Temple to rest for a while, and today he achieved his goal. It seemed that he had a plan. It was so easy to achieve what he wanted, and it was killing two birds with one stone. He should be happy. But looking at him, his mood was worse than before he went to the Luo family. After thinking about it, Eunuch Mu realized that the problem might be caused by noble consort Su. They all knew that his master was ambitious for the throne and was determined to get it. So he secretly set up a big trap. Maybe it was because he felt ashamed to face noble consort Su, who raised him up. Or was it that master and noble consort Su were not as close as they seemed on the surface? As for what was going on, master didn't mention it, nor did he express it clearly. No matter how hard Eunuch Mu thought about it, it was useless. However, he didn't need to waste his time to speculate on this matter. Leaving the palace, before Li Honyuan got on the carriage, he looked at the majestic palace and thought of noble consort Su's last instructions. The punishment was fake, the praying for blessings was real. As for the object of the praying, naturally, it couldn't be touched by something that shouldn't be touched. That was the taboo in his good imperial father's heart. No matter how much he indulged him, if he stepped on his bottom line, he would incur his thunderous wrath. However, even if he had completely broken all the precepts of the Buddhist sect, you still need to know about it. Returning to Jin Qinhuangfu, because they were already prepared, they quickly packed up their things and didn't make a big fuss. After all, a dignified Qinhuang being punished was not a glorious thing. When Gong Mama received the things from the shadow guards, she trembled with anger. It wasn't easy for her to calm down. Turning around, she had no choice but to find her Mississippi Miss. The peach blossoms in White Dragon Temple have bloomed. Do you want to go take a look? The peach forest in White Dragon Temple is very large. Every time it blooms, it is especially beautiful. In the entire capital, you can't find a better peach forest. Digression. On the first day it was published, it was updated 10,000 times. Thank you, dear friends, for your support. However, because the author needs to take care of the baby, the little guy who is not even 2 years old is very naughty. He causes trouble all day long and also doesn't know how to be obedient. Therefore, the time to write is very little. https://www.bicken.com/11/11807/6652949. HTML chapter error. Click here to report. Registration is not required. We will deal with it as soon as possible. After reporting, please wait patiently and refresh the page. Please remember the domain name of this book, www.bicken.com, Bikuga mobile reading website, mbicken.com. You're tuning in to the Echo Reads YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.